Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday, April 12th, and the time is 1:01 p.m. We're here for our briefing meeting today, and we'll be beginning with our Tech College update. And I'll introduce Mr. Everly.
Thank you. Go ahead and let, just for myself, I'm Todd Everly, the Senior Director of the Lee Technical Colleges.
John Roselle, I'm the Director of Fort Myers Technical College.
And Charlie Pease, Director of Cape Coral Technical College.
Ms. McClung, thank you.
So you heard a lot about our increased academic achievement, increased kindergarten readiness, and increased college and career readiness. And we talked mainly about K through 12 college and career readiness at that point. So today, we're going to focus in on college and career readiness post-secondary, and we're going to look at our superintendent's big goal, Big Five goal number 3. And that goal is to increase our placements, job placements from our tech colleges and our public service academy by 100% by 2030, which is a really big deal for our community because that will provide additional workforce for our community. In order to do that, really the only way is to expand capacity. So today you're going to hear about 3 big projects to do just that. We'll start off with the expansion of CCTC, Cape Coral Technical College, and then we'll talk about the renovations that are currently happening at Fort Myers Technical College and about the planned annex in the East Zone, which would add additional seats to Fort Myers Technical College. And then you'll hear about a proposal to relocate our Public Service Academy so that it can be on a campus that will better meet the needs of that in the future. Doing those 3 big projects would help us meet that goal of increasing our placements by 100%. So today you'll hear first from Charlie Pease, who's our Director of Cape Coral Technical College. He'll talk about the planned expansion there. And then John Roselle, who is the Director of Fort Myers Technical College, will talk about the renovations and the annex. And then you'll hear from Todd Everly, who is our Senior Director of all of the colleges, about our expansion proposal for the Public Service Academy. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Pease. And Charlie, take it away.
Right. Good morning once again, everyone. Charlie Pease, Director of Cape Coral Technical College. I am really excited to be here to talk to you about the progress toward the expansion project at Cape Coral Technical College. A couple of slides that are similar to what you've seen in the past, but I think it's nice to review. Our present, we've actually grown to over 200,000 residents in the city of Cape Coral. And what I always like to tell folks is that we are the only college in the entire city of Cape Coral. It's really unfathomable to think about that at over 200,000 residents. There are no small vocational schools, no private, no public, there's no FSW, nothing of that sort in the entire city of Cape Coral. So it's really important that we continue to expand and that we offer additional workforce development education opportunities in the area of what I like to call the blue-collar program. So I always tell folks, you can see up on the screen, that the programs that we currently have are a lot of the white-collar programs. They are fantastic programs, but we do want to expand to some of the traditional skilled trades as well. So about a year ago, 10 months or so ago, we had the opportunity to sit right here and present to you a vision. At the time, it was simply a vision for the future of Cape Coral Technical College. And you can see there the vision was to have an auto service and marine service technology program within 1 to 3 years. And in the middle slide there, the middle of the screen, you can see that the goal was to have additional skilled trades programs within 4 to 6 years. So those would include things such as HVAC, welding, construction technology design, and some expansion to our currently very successful health science programs and other professional programs. And then the last thing you see up there on the screen is something that we're going to be working on continuously over the next several years to build what's known as a bridge program for our practical nursing program. At Cape Coral Technical College, our practical nursing program is currently ranked number 2 in the entire state of Florida out of about 90 programs, number 8 in the southeastern United States of America. And it's important to us that we potentially in the future be able to offer an associate's degree bridge program once our students graduate from our practical nursing program. This is a timeline update, and as I mentioned, I'm excited that we're about to really get moving here. I mentioned earlier that the yellow there, which is the board presentation we did in June of 2021, about 10 months ago. In September, we were fortunate enough in the current iteration of the 5-year capital improvement plan for you as a board to approve the capital improvement plan to include $14.6 million for the expansion of the Cape Coral Technical College campus. In green there, you can see the procurement process played out from January through March. I do want to give a shout out to Tracy Adams, the Director of Procurement, as well as Lori Nine, the Coordinator of Procurement. They are fantastic. The organization of this process was wonderful. It was my first time being part of the competitive request for qualifications process, and I think they did a fantastic job. That brings us to today, which is the blue. You can see there tonight before you, you will have an agenda item to potentially approve, if you see fit, the scoring of the request for qualifications for the architectural, construction, and building official services to move forward with contract negotiations and then move forward with the design of our project. On the right-hand side of the screen there, you can see a general timeline that we think still is very relatively accurate given the feedback that we received during the RFQ process. And that is that once we have a contract in place to be able to engage with the architectural services folks in the next couple of months, then we should be able to do the engineering work, the architectural design work, as well as looking at things like the flooding and things like that to figure out where exactly we can position buildings on our campus and complete that design work by December of 2022. And then we would then break ground in the spring of 2023 on, at a minimum, the auto and marine building with the goal of completing that building, substantial completion by spring of 2024, and then moving forward with opening those 2 programs. This slide is just a breakdown of where our project is in terms of the phasing of the current iteration of the 5-year capital improvement plan. So I mentioned that we would engage with the architectural and engineering folks here starting immediately once approved with the campus master plan. That is currently budgeted for this fiscal year. In the middle there, you can see for next fiscal year, the auto and marine building is budgeted to break ground, and it's in the 5-year capital plan for next year. And then out there on the right-hand side, fiscal year 26. So the 3rd building currently is not actually slated to be built until the school year 25-26. There was some initial conversation discussion during the RFQ process about some potential cost savings by possibly moving the timeline up of phase 3. Those are discussions that will take place with the capital committee, but that's something that has been initially discussed, given that phase 3 is currently slated for construction in 25-26. A couple other things I want to mention, actually, if I can, Ms. McClung, on the previous slide, related to potential cost savings and some of the efforts that we're putting forth right now to try to offset some of the costs, because it is one pie, and we want to make sure that if we can save some costs here on this project, we do want to be able to shift some of these funds to other projects. So in terms of partnerships, we certainly fully anticipate having partnerships. I won't put any specific companies out there that we've engaged with at this point. I would anticipate that the partnerships that I would be involved with heavily would be in the $5,000 to $50,000 range for things like equipment, for things like smaller signage. We do hope to work very closely with our fundraising folks here in the district for some of the bigger possible contributions that are out there, and we will continue to engage with them on that. I also want to talk about a grant that we are currently working on that could save significant funds here. It is still a long shot. It is a very political grant, but the Florida Job Growth Grant. You may have seen a press release about 4 or 5 months ago from Collier County. They worked on a $5 million grant to work on a project on a technical center in Glades County, which is a multi-county initiative with some of the rural counties. We are modeling a grant currently. I want to say thank you to Terry Kennedy's shop, as well as Kathy Keck, in working with us in grants. Cindy McClung's been working very closely with us. Our team, and even Carol Green with Capital Strategies has helped us obtain some letters of support for the Cape Coral Technical College expansion project for the application we hope to submit in the next couple of weeks. We do have a letter of support for this project from Senator Kathleen Pasadoma, who, as you know, is the incoming president of the Florida Senate, and we have a few others, and we anticipate getting a few others before we submit that next week. In terms of that job growth grant, what we're asking for essentially is a couple of $1 million to offset some of the construction costs, the infrastructure, about $1 million for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and about $1 million for personnel for the operating expenses that it would cost to run the auto and marine for the initial 3 or 4 years. So again, it's a long shot, but we are working very closely to do everything we can to offset some costs, because those could then be shifted to other projects. So everyone here knows that I like the visuals, and so the rest of my part here is just some visuals. This actually is a very, relative to the other ones you'll see here, is a very rudimentary visual, because this is something that you saw for the first time last June. This is something that we put together in conjunction with Don Williams and Kathy Eba in planning when we were initially designing the concept and the vision that we had. On the screen over there in the white space, up and down, north to south, that would be where Santa Barbara Boulevard runs, if you're familiar with Cape Coral. So you would pull into our parking lot, and you can see the main entrance there. The vision, of course, is for the auto and marine building to be right up on the parking lot, storefront style, facing Santa Barbara Boulevard, with the marine program there either on the back or on the front, if we can design it in such a way that that makes sense. And then the additional building out there on the what would be the northwest side of our campus would be what we are calling Phase 3 at the moment, which is the additional skilled trades with welding, HVAC, and so on. So the next slide actually brings it a little bit more to life. And this is something that was presented to us by the construction services firm that will come before you tonight for approval. Again, this is totally conceptual, but it really illustrates the idea of having 3 buildings unified by an outdoor courtyard, a proper college campus type of feel, which is important to me and other stakeholders at Cape Coral Tech. I also want to draw your attention on this slide to, so in this case, Santa Barbara Boulevard would be running left to right at the bottom of the screen. But you see the orange arrow there. So one of the things that's very important is that we unify this campus. And so we had a vision, and you'll see it on the next slide. Once you go into our current building, this is the inside of the courtyard of our current building. And if you've been on our campus, what you're doing here is facing our multi-purpose room, where we do a lot of presentations, as well as our culinary program is off there to the left. But we hope to unify the campus by creating a breezeway that looks something like that. And this would really tie the entire campus together with the 3 buildings, having the outdoor courtyard, which is straight ahead of you there. And so before she goes to the next one, I know when we made these slides, I like to toggle back and forth because it's so cool. It looks like magic that you're blowing out a wall there. But that is the idea, to unify the campus. And we're really excited about the possibility of doing that. The last thing I want forth by the architectural services firm that scored the highest. And you'll see there, it shows our entire campus, and they'll do some really cool zoom arounds here. Again, totally conceptual. This is not the actual final design, but it's really neat here to see, again, the 3 building design with the outdoor courtyard. Up there on the left side of the screen, you can see that we actually have significant additional room for additional expansion in the future as Cape Coral continues to grow. And I do anticipate some of those buildings being shifted more out into the parking lot, as I mentioned, for the storefront style. But very neat video that was put together that shows the plot of land that we have, and you can see some of the basic design renderings there. And as this wraps up, you'll see sort of that storefront idea of having it exposed to Santa Barbara Boulevard and making sure that we can service the public, especially with the auto program. Of course, there would likely be a roll gate there, for entry with the auto marine and so on, but very neat technology, and we like to bring it to life whenever we can. So I want to say thank you for your support, and we are really excited to move forward with the project here at Cape Coral Technical College.
Thank you, Mr. Pease.
So I'm going to hand it over. I think the next part of the presentation here is Mr. John Roselle, who's the director of Fort Myers Technical College.
Good afternoon, board members. Dr. Savage. Okay, so I want to circle back real quick. When we started the remodel project, we had 2 primary purposes for the FMTC renovation. One was to increase capacity to help with local workforce needs, and 2, to upgrade equipment and campus to meet industry standards. It is also notable that the workforce development funds we will receive from the increase in capacity will have a 3-year lag, so it will be 3 years before we see a return on our investment at the school level. A little timeline here as well. So where are we at today with the renovation of FMTC? In September of 2021, over a year and a half ago, the board approved $12.7 million in the 5-year capital improvement plan. In January of this year, RG Architects reached 100% construction documents, and the project was put out for final bid by Christel Construction. Currently, the final project costs are pending board approval later this month. If all goes well as planned, we expect to have the renovation completed by the fall of 2023. The next 2 slides will give you a look into the design concept and vision for the renovation. On the right of this slide is a picture from a trip a year ago to Manatee Technical College in Sarasota. We toured the campus for ideas. Manatee is one of the flagship schools in the state in its design. The big takeaway here is the remodel will allow for high school bus visits and stakeholders to look into the labs without disrupting the learning environment. We hope this will inspire our high school students to enroll into technical education when they see the hands-on training taking place. All of the remodeled labs are designed to be flexible spaces and can be easily adapted as needed. College in Sarasota, we wanted to incorporate the open lab concept as seen here on the right. The remodel also includes an automotive storefront for real-world experience. Students will have the opportunity to work live with customers, dropping off the keys, to closing out work tickets, and finally customer pickup of the keys, completing a scheduled service from start to finish. Real valuable job experience. We also will be the first in Southwest Florida to offer job-ready students with hybrid and electric technology training due to the fact that one of the auto bay labs will be remodeled solely for dedicated to hybrid and electric cars. Okay, now for the much anticipated discussion surrounding the FMTC East Annex. We have chosen to keep the FMTC name due to accreditation and funding reasons to open faster as an extension campus. Keeping the name will allow the new school to be eligible for federal student grants that otherwise would take up to 3 years to qualify if a new college in name were to open. The board approved in September of 2021 in the CIP to include $40 million for this project to be budgeted in FY 24 through 26. In March of 2022, just recently, based on the team's discussion, we are excited to announce that the State Road 82 parcel has been recommended as the location for the annex. This area is projected to continue to grow and was supported by business partners. Additionally, the location will better serve students in the East Zone, and its proximity to the airport will be helpful in planned programs in avionics. So the programs you see here are currently in place at FMTC and will be moved to the annex. All of these programs are in high demand and need to be expanded on when moved to the new campus. These are core programs that provide a pipeline of job-ready technicians to our local business community. Additionally, all the listed programs here will remain in high demand as job growth continues to rise in Southwest Florida. These are the planned new programs to be placed at the annex, but may change when the campus is built based on the current need at the time of opening. The industry analysis and local job markets, which you will see on the next slide, concludes that these programs are currently in high demand. Solar job growth is at 51% through 2028. Also, programs like commercial driver's licensure A and B and diesel maintenance will enable the district to recruit and train muchly needed transportation specialists. The programs were selected and determined by examining regional job projections. As previously noted, the exact programs that will be at the annex may change based upon analysis. Any closer to the opening of the campus, we'll have to reevaluate perhaps. Also, notice the job growth and the potential business partners in these areas that will help jumpstart and launch new programs, all of which in double-digit job growth. The data here is also projected to be through 2028. Some programs will be duplicated at both the current FMTC campus and the new annex, like you see listed here. This will double the capacity for these programs, and students will have the ability to access health science programs in the east, west, and south zones. All of these programs remain in high demand, as you will notice on the next slide. Once again, notice the double-digit job growth percentages and potential business partners as evidenced in expanding these programs. All of the listed programs here will remain, again, in high demand through 2028. So how do we fund the new FMTC campus? Initial planning suggests that the annex would be around 210,000 square feet. The size of the school is relative to Manatee Technical College. It would hold 30-plus programs. Our latest estimates put cost at $380 per square foot, bringing us to an estimated project cost of approximately $80 million. During last year's budget process, it was proposed that half of the $80 million projected cost be raised through donations. While we anticipate great business and community support of this project, we need to realize this challenge is the challenge in inheriting and raising $40 million. Generally, partners are willing to donate equipment, which is great and beneficial. However, monetary donations will be necessary for construction costs. Currently, our grants department is working on fundraising planning, including searching for appropriate grants and fundraising activities to help support this. Realistically, if this project is to come to fruition, the district may need to fund a larger portion of the budget, of this in the budget. This will involve some difficult decisions to be made regarding the future of other budgeted plans. We know at any time one receives an increase in funding, others must have a decrease. With that, I will hand it over to Mr. Everly, our Senior Director, to give you an update on the PSA.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. You know, a lot of our attention drawn to this, and the reason we wanted to come in front of you today is to show not only the Cape Coral Technical College renovation and the expansions, Fort Myers Tech, and the annex that we all, including the board, has been waiting for to move forward somewhere out east. That leaves us with the Public Service Academy, and that's part of this process to give you guys an overview of all three of the campuses and our plans for the Public Service Academy for Southwest Florida. We have two phases. The first phase obviously was to build a gun range, indoor gun range, and a certified driving track, and that'll be a little bit more on I'll talk a little bit more on that on the second slide coming up. Phase two would be, and we brought this to the board a while ago, is that we're going to keep some of those programs that are currently at the Fort Myers Technical College site. When the annex opens up, we would keep the medical programs, culinary arts programs, some of the early childhood programs, because we made a commitment to that, to the area of Fort Myers there, especially with the mass transit that we have there, to allow students to have an opportunity to have 3 locations in Lee County to seek those technical trades. So we would keep them there as well. So we would pull out everything and just have the Public Service Academy relocate from the location we're at, which is Michigan Montessori, Michigan Elementary School. 2011, the academy moved to the current site. It sits on roughly 20 acres. 4 of those acres is unbuildable. It is Greenland right now, but it's a water runoff to the canal system that embarks that whole Michigan corridor, so you cannot build on it. We actually sat down with construction company and Mr. Reckenbacher and came out and we said, what can we do on this site? And it really was not much. The school is so old, the asbestos that is in throughout the building, if you start ripping out the walls, he said you would have some major problems doing it. So the recommendation was, at that time, not to tear down anything and try to add a second story, possibly. The footprint's still not large enough for us, it's the 20 acres, so our plan was to take the Public Service Academy, move it over to the current Fort Myers Technical College. That doubles our space of 40 acres, roughly 40 acres. Currently, that is on the slide up front there is our planned programs. I want to give you a little bit of a snapshot. Some of you in the past have come out and toured the academy where it is now, but I just wanted to let you know the magnitude of the work that we are doing right now. We offer in a physical year, we offer 6 law enforcement classes a year. There are about 770 clock hours. We do 5 correction officers classes at 420 clock hours. We do 2 crossover, which is if you're a certified correction officer, to become a certified law enforcement officer, you have to take a 518-hour clock hour course, which we offer 2 of those, and we do the reverse. We offer a law enforcement to correction, and we offer 1 of those. That's a 198-hour class. Our big rise that we have seen lately is called equivalency of training, and what that is, if you are a certified officer somewhere in the United States, you petition the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and if they see that you have this close to the same credentials as being an officer in the state, you take a 32-hour course, and you can do it at our academy. We offer it now. It's the 4 high liabilities. It's the practical and written parts. That is your driving training. That is your medical training, your defensive tactics and firearms, and sit the state exam. In a physical year, we are well over 200 now officers for Southwest Florida, coming from the Big East. They're leaving the Big East part of the United States and coming here to be a certified officer somewhere in the state of Florida. The agencies are eating them up. They're using them. We used to see this about 5 years ago, and the average age was people retiring, mid-50s coming down. That is not the case now. The case is these young men and women are in their late 20s and early 30s. And I sit down and talk to them, and when we're sitting in the cafeteria and just ask where they're from, and you can see, and the culture changes for them, and it's New York, Philadelphia, Minneapolis, Baltimore. They're coming from the major cities to come here and be law enforcement somewhere in the state of Florida. So just wanted to let you know that that influx is coming. We also have a full-time EMT program, emergency medical technician. That's a 300 clock hour. We do 4 of those a year. And then finally, we have a firefighter program, which is 492 hours. We do 2 of those for our adults, and that also does not include our high school Fire 1 program that we partner with Ida Baker, South Fort Myers, and East Lee County High School. And that's a very successful program. It's expensive, but we have that partnership with our secondary schools. Also, with the addition and possibly being able to move over, which is our recommendation to Fort Myers Technical College, would be is that there is a need now for paramedics on top of the EMT. We would look in petition of having a paramedic program also added, because we would have the room space and the land space to be able to do that on that program. Go to the next slide. So here, shortly after Dr. Savage was made the superintendent, he reached out to the construction division and said, asked Mr. Rickenbach and his team to work on a draft, drawings, and projected cost for having a indoor gun range currently at the Fort Myers Technical College where we would move. That's the smaller box. And then the larger box that you see in front of you would be the certified driving track. That track has to be certified through the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. It has to be a certain size and conditions, and there's certain things that have to be on it. With the driving track, obviously, it has to meet our needs, and it would for our law enforcement basic recruit, our fire service. We would also be able to offer those CDL licenses that Director Rozelle was mentioning, that we can offer those at nighttime, and even our own bus driver training for our school buses will allow them to have an additional space to use. No one knew what the cost would have been. We had no idea. When it came back, it was a little bit of a sticker shock. It was projected around $18.4 million for those 2 buildings inside the Fort Myers Technical College campus. This has never been budgeted yet. It has not gone to the Capital Committee, but I wanted to make sure that you see the full picture for all 3 of our campuses and what's in front of you. We know that these are tough decisions for the school district, but myself and Director Peace and Director Rozelle wanted to make sure that you had a full picture of where we're at, where we're headed, and decisions are made then by the district with you as the board to decide what's in your 5-year plan. I do want to just finish up with one more about where we all end with this, and that is the projected capacity. And you need to look at it a little bit different than how you would look at a normal school. When you build a school and you may have 2,000 more seats. These are putting people in the job market on a yearly basis. Instead of reading each of these current max seats that we have and projected, I'd really like you to focus on the totals there. The current total right now for the 3 campuses is about 1,560 seats available. And you got to remember, we have classes within that year that we will have different cohorts through a physical year. And then with the projected, with the renovations, the new school, it would be roughly around 2,480 seats available to put out each year to our communities. So with that, I do want to just recognize a couple. I want to recognize Director Peace and Roselle. They're very enthusiastic, as you can see. They're energized. We got the arrows pointing in the right direction here. I want to also recognize Miss McClung. I always call her our den mother, but she keeps a lot of us straight. And keeps the divisions working together. Dr. Spiro, Dr. Savage, we're working with business services, and we're working with the operations department. And like I said, there's a lot of tough decisions to be made, but it was my intent, and we all agreed as a leadership team, that you hear from us. You get a chance to see where we're at, what needs to still be done, and then those decisions rely upon you. So we stand ready for any questions on any of this, if there are any.
So board members, Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions, so I'll try to sort of summarize in a way. We're being asked to carry a really heavy lift as a school district. I mean, essentially, K-12, we have the budget to pay for. The community will benefit from early childhood and from career and technology. Those have to be community-driven projects. They can't be Lee County School District-driven projects. I think what we really need is some sort of a project team to pull together the city, the county, the cities, and businesses to an MOU to focus on what are our economic needs and how are we going to underwrite them. I don't think we can take this on ourselves. I think if we're going to do it ourselves, we're not going to get it done when it needs to be done. And I don't think we've made it clear to the public that there is responsibility, financial and just in terms of planning, there's a responsibility on their part to engage in this process. So, and then my other question, well, one more question is the Service Academy. Why do we have the Service Academy? And how much of our funding goes into the Service Academy? Where is the rest of the funding coming from? Because I am concerned that we're basically eliminating the Fort Myers Technical College in favor of the Public Service Academy. I have lots more questions, but basically I'm looking at, we need a strategic plan for how much is going to come from grants, how much is going to come from public investment, how much is going to come from the school district, how much is going to come from the Horizon Council. We need to have a plan. We can't be talking about what we can do because we're not going to get it done. Those are my comments.
Thank you.
Let me, if I could, answer the question reference to the Service Academy. There's 43 law enforcement academies in the state. Out of the 43, you have to be attached to either a school district or a traditional college. Right now, it is split pretty much down the middle, where they're either on a technical college or on a state college throughout the state of Florida. If the district ever decided to give up the license and allow another venue to take the license, there's a petition through the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. There's a process. I sit on the commission, so we see this quite a bit. You would lose so much funding from the state that the other two schools would not survive. We do not receive any funding from the general fund. We are like a business. We pay for our own electric, our own carpet, our own, anything that's not a capital expense. So anything that is a capital expense on repairing, not even repairing, but anything that's large, roofing, anything that is major, we go in that rotation as well. We pay for everything. So the tuition that we make is to our salaries, everything. Every school employee that's on that, we pay for. Anything that we do, we live within our budget. We have done a great job over the last several years because on top of us not only paying our bills and being able to help each other out, we also share that funding with our adult ed and CTE and also Dunbar community. So we get a formula that's called WITIS funds. Lucky for us, I'm sorry, I always want to call him doctor, but he acts like a doctor at times, but anyway, Charlie sits on now our board to make sure, and I'll let him give you the exact name of it, but he was up there, but he just came back on yesterday on sitting about how is the formulas done and to make sure we get 100%. We're based off of completion, placement, and licensure. That's how we're funded, that's how we are accredited. And if we get those, we get so much money per seat. And we do well. I believe, and I'll let Charlie speak, I think we're either third or fifth in the state that receives the most money. And that's over all the major cities and the districts. That's based off of because we're putting them people, getting them placement, getting them licensed, and they're completing our programs. So to pull that out, I'm sure there would be a lot of people who would want the Service Academy. It's a moneymaker. Okay. We really, the Public Service Academy really, because of the amount of students we have in a given year, because of how many, our classes are shorter, 770 clock hours, 300, the 512 and so on like that, we generate those funds that stay, and it goes back to our funding, which is separate from the general fund. We have a pretty hefty reserve as well, because we are planning when the time and if it is approved, that we know that we're going to have to chip in our reserve to help pay for salaries up front with a new school. We understand that.
Okay, so I'm just going to say that I think it's important that we understand the financial relationships between these institutions. I also don't understand why the technical colleges can't stand alone. Do other counties use the same? So what is it that we're not doing with respect to technical colleges that allow them to operate without a PSA underwriting?
So statutorily, the technical centers, as they're in statute, have to be part of a school district of Lee County, the public technical, or they have to be part of a school district. But to sort of reiterate what Todd mentioned, it's been in existence for so long that PSA is tied in that our funding, if we were to separate from the PSA, we would not be able to stand alone. I mean, I was in Orlando yesterday. The committee he's mentioning is headed by Vice Chancellor Tara Goodman, who's Vice Chancellor of Career and Technical Education. She's a funding guru. I'm on the committee along with 8 or 10 other directors throughout Florida. And it's really important. So I think the question was, can we separate the PSA out, or does that make sense? What can you clarify
the question really is, why can't we? Do other technical colleges, I guess, how do I put this? Technical colleges then are being underwritten by something else. So they're either being underwritten, in our case, by a PSA, or they're being underwritten by operating budgets in school districts. So, I mean, is that?
Yeah, so there are certain models in different districts. I know Collier, I talked to Yolanda Flores, who's the executive director there, where they do get some funding out of the general fund for things like custodial expenses and that sort of thing, which does offset some of their costs. But just to be clear on what Todd mentioned, the way that we get our funds, there's 3 buckets, I like to think of them, right? One is Workforce Development Fund. That's part of the general appropriations, right?
Charlie, I'm going to stop you because we're only allowed for 4 minutes per person, and I know other people have questions. So maybe you and I can continue this conversation later time, because I know there are other board members who have questions.
We'll get something in writing for you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens.
Okay. Good afternoon, gentlemen. And to piggyback on what Ms. Morgan was saying, excuse me, one of my questions was, in September of 2021, you mentioned that we allocated $40 million for the annex building. And I guess and at that time, it was on the 5-year plan. And then suddenly it was moved to the 10-year plan, and now it's not due until 2026. So I don't know, and you probably don't have the answer for that, as to why was that shifted. At the time in 2021, in my estimation, the reason we allotted that money was that of the high need for it at the time. And I never understood why it was shifted and, put back. I don't know if you can answer that, or maybe that's...
Dr. Savage, did you want, that was reference to, I believe, Kathy Eball's presentation?
Yeah, I was just going into the budget book just so I could pull it up as we were seeing. So I think, we just want to make sure we have the facts correctly on this. So from your best understanding, I'm pulling up the budget book now.
Yeah, you can get back to me on that, but, or the superintendent, but I just think it was always a question for me.
Let me let Charlie speak to that portion, because he was intimately involved in that a little bit. We could answer that quickly for you, if you would like.
Because I have some other questions.
To clarify, the question is just how did the East Annex end up where it's at right now in the CIP, right? With the way it's
when we
phased.
had voted on in 21, $40 million to begin the project.
Right.
And
So
then it ended up moving.
We weren't involved in determining the timeline. What we said is, hey, we're ready to move forward on this. There were, I believe, 3 scenarios of the CIP that were presented to you all last June. They had different phasing with different amounts, including what you see up on the screen, which would include a $40 million additional fundraising need. There were 2 scenarios that were presented that were fully funded at the $80 million, and the board collectively made the decision to move forward with the capital improvement plan that was approved in September, as you see it up there on the screen, with the different phasing, which would be the planning phase in fiscal year 24, and then the fiscal year 25 and 26 for construction.
Okay, and we'll get into that later. I agree with Ms. Morgan, and I've said this before, that we need to figure out what is our part of the heavy lift and what is the community and what is, government and federal. And, I listened to you talk about the Florida Job Growth Grant, and that it's exciting that you're trying to get that for one of the other schools. But if the need is in one area, why wouldn't we have tried to go after that where the need really was? And why haven't we gone after some of those grants for the East Zone? And in conjunction with that, 2 years ago, I think it was in 20 or 21 when we were talking about this, the data showed that 38% of the participant students at FMTC were from the East Zone. And you may not have it now, but I would like to know the update of that, because I'm sure that it's grown, and because the need economically and job-wise has continued to grow. And I said then, and I believe now, that if 38%, if you open a store in an area and 38% of your customer traffic is from across the river, you would seriously think about opening a store across the river. So that's my frustration with where I am very excited to hear of the project going on 82, and especially with the opening of Alico Road, the airport, the retail, and all of that. It will be very, very good to have that. A question and suggestion is, until all of that happens, we still have a plethora of students in the East Zone that would love to have the training to get a job to fill some of these positions. Have we thought about, in the interim, doing some type of a transportation from the East Zone to FMTC? a bus or something of that sort. Transportation is a major, major issue. And a couple of years ago, if you lived in Lehigh, 25% of your salary, your income went for transportation. So you know that that has skyrocketed now. So that's the kind of things I'd like to look into. I am happy that we are looking at this slide that shows the increase that we're going to have. But currently, the need is extremely heavy for now. So if there's something we could do, transportation or whatever, until we can get these things in place.
Ms. Gittens, if I could address the first question you had about the grant.
Yes.
We actually looked at that job growth grant for the annex first, but it turned out that the timeline was not appropriate because the funds would have to be expended before we would be able to expend them. So we looked at it two ways. One, anything we can save on this project can be moved to another project, and with the hope, because you never know what happens in Tallahassee, but we're hoping that this will be an ongoing grant, in which case we would apply for another one when we do get to the point where those funds would be available for the East Annex.
And that's an excellent example of when I talk about communication, an update with just what you said to the board, to the community, would give at least me and the community the idea this is on the front burner. It is something that we're working on. And because if all you see is expansion here and expansion there, but we don't see expansion in the east, we don't know what's going on, that communication piece is critical to that. I've just got one other quick thing. You mentioned keeping medical and culinary in at Fort Myers and not bringing that.
No, we would actually have it at all three locations.
Okay, all right.
The
That's what I
growing
wanted to-
demand is there. We have enough students to allow it to be at all three locations.
Oh, no, I know. I spoke with someone from Lee Health a couple of months ago, and at the time, something like 60 or 70% of their nursing students were coming from the east zone.
Okay.
So,
And we'll get, Ms. Gittens, we'll get you by area, an update. We'll get that to the
as to
board.
who's coming from where.
Where they're
and
coming
if we
from,
have
and
them
what
going
students
to-
are currently going to the locations that we're at right now.
Because even going to Cape, the animal husbandry program, I know there's a lot of students from Alva and Olga in that area where they have farms and animals that are going to attend there. So the last thing is, you mentioned the driving track and getting the CDL licenses and all. Has there ever been a thought of some type of a partnership or whatever with the old airport where the range is in Lehigh?
Buckingham Airfield, that is now owned by the county, and to be upfront with you, that is completely booked. We have to book our training there with every other law enforcement agency, every other EMS agency, and so on to use that area.
And what, the slide that you showed where you're going to have the area to do that at FMTC, can you get me, what does that space look like?
I
mean,
would
is
have,
it
yeah,
2
I would
acres,
get it
3
from our
acres?
operation. I forget exactly the
If you could get me that,
size.
that would be awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gittens. Ms. Patrica.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Mr. Peace, every time you come in front of the board, I see even more growth from the last time you were there, and I didn't think it was possible for you to grow more than you had the last time you were here. I'm really, really impressed. I think you're doing a great job. And I thought it was really funny, Director Roselle, that you talked about the bad news regarding the budget and then quickly handed it over to Mr. Everly. Mr. Everly, are you still returning money to the district every year? I remember when I first ran for school board, or first got on the school board and went out and toured, you were returning money to the district. Or have you grown to the extent that that's no longer possible?
So our funding model's changed a little bit on how we have our own budget.
Okay.
It does not intertwine with the general budget.
Okay.
It will go back into our reserve, and that's by statute. Anything that we do, secondary funds cannot intermix with post-secondary funds. We have two separate budgets.
Okay.
And we have a very hefty reserve. That is our commitment to stay within our budgets, along with the CT and Adult Ed and Dunbar Community School.
Perfect. Okay, so I think I have two questions. Is there, and you touched on this, Director Peace, is there inefficiency in building out the Cape Coral Technical College in phases? Would it not cost less to have all of those buildings built by one vendor at one time at today's labor and materials costs? And you probably don't have that answer off the top of your head, so I guess my question to the superintendent would be, can we have a comparison of what it would cost to build all of them now versus building them out in phases? If there's not a big difference, then I guess we're good to go with the phasing, but if we're going to save a lot of money by doing it all at once, might it not make sense to think about doing that?
I can speak a little bit to that because I was in the RFQ process and the presentations, and it did come up multiple times. Our project manager within the district construction services did ask the question, and the answer consistently, because you do have to ask the same question of every firm that is presenting, and the answer consistently was that there could be some potential savings, or not necessarily savings that would take off costs, but preventing additional costs by taking the construction firm off the site for 2 years and having to bring the subcontractors and permitting and all that sort of thing. And some of them mentioned a number in the seven-figure neighborhood as potential additional costs. So there is some opportunity there. Again, we fully understand that that's something the capital planning committee would have to discuss because there are all kinds of irons in the fire here in the district. So, but I think you're spot on with that, and there has been initial discussion around that.
So can we at least see some numbers and have a discussion as a board and as a leadership team as to whether that makes sense? I know that they would be projections, but.
I'm happy to ask the capital committee. The advantage of the capital committee is you're speaking from all sides. So you've got, the programmatic users, you've got the business finance sides. They can explain kind of how the allocated funds, why they segment them out over multiple years, and that prioritization aspect. You've got the constructions. They can talk about the labor. They can talk about the relationships with the various vendors they rely upon. Happy to have them put together some information to supplement what the conversation today.
That'd be great, thank you. And then my last set of questions, may I continue? Yes. My last set of questions is surrounding the moving of programs out east. I really love the location of Fort Myers Technical College because I believe it's easily accessible by the south, the east, and the west, although the west is less and less necessary for people to travel. There are no career and technical education opportunities in the South beyond South Fort Myers High School, and to move those programs out east would be difficult. So I guess my question is, the first I'm hearing of moving those programs out east. I thought that an east annex was going to be an addition, and I get that it is going to be an addition, but we're also closing some of those programs, so to speak, at Fort Myers Tech. Is there a way to renovate the current PSA building or campus so that we can expand options for people that would find it difficult to travel out east? Make sense?
So the recommendation for the current PSA, the Michigan Elementary School, is not to build anything more on it. We've already outgrown that building. We put some parking in. You got to remember, it was an elementary school footprint, so it was not ready for people to drive, that many students to come in. We just put an additional 50 spots in about 3 years ago. We're turning down programs right now. We're turning down money right now because we can't. We're trying to do it all on the current site, and we can't do it. So the question is that it was our commitment to keep programs still at Fort Myers Technical College. It does background checks and so on, so they'll intermix with the Public Service Academy. There's more programs that could stay there. There's possibilities. These were just general ideas. Nothing's fixed in stone. We just felt that the medical need, public safety need, and some of those others, there's enough room there to keep more there if need be.
Okay, so perhaps some kind of an analysis, and I know you guys have done this to show where students are coming from across the district and what programs are being utilized by those in the south and the west at Fort Myers Tech would be helpful as we come to the point of making the final decisions.
Okay.
Please and thank you.
Thank you.
May I just say that that's what I asked for in the beginning? Was, okay.
Right here.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Ms. Giovanelli.
So I just want to thank you because sometimes people don't realize the opportunities here in Lee County that we have. So my husband's in law enforcement, and he's taking classes there, and they're hiring at the port. And without what you do, we wouldn't get the candidates and the employees that's needed in Lee County, much less in other areas of the state, because people would have to come here to get certified, and we need, there's a shortage of certified law enforcement. So it's great that we still have that opportunity. I wanted to ask you, how old is Michigan Elementary? Do you know?
You know, I almost looked that up because I have the plaque still at the front of the school. I believe that school was built in the 60s.
Yeah, at least.
And I don't have the exact year. I tell you what I'll do. When I get back tomorrow, because I have another appointment right now I have to be at, I'm going to take a screenshot and I will send that to the board. There is a plaque there from the original board members, superintendent, and so on that we kept part of the tradition of the school.
Right. So, and Levotech was there at around the same time, actually, too. It might be a little bit newer than the actual elementary school
Yeah,
part of it.
Central Votech was the original. I went there when I was in high school.
Yeah, so I went there for a cake decorating class. I don't know if we talked about it before, and like I got sick because I ate all the icing, but that's another story.
Taco Tuesday, right?
That's a true story. My mother wanted to teach me cake, decorating, but whatever. So, but I just want to say that combining the two was a brilliant idea, although we lost an elementary school that was still needed in the East Zone. So, but the need is there, and it's a great need. So the plan and working towards a plan and having and collaborating, and as Ms. Morgan brought up, the business community aspect of it, it's important. So I just wanted to thank you for that and just let people know these are old schools. I mean, so you do run out of space, because the vision wasn't always there, initially. One was an elementary school, so, and you can totally tell it's an elementary school when you go there.
Our toilets are still the size of an elementary school.
Yeah.
Door handles too, so.
Thank you. I'm just going to digress a minute. Ms. Vaughn, are you on the phone, and do you have any questions?
I am on the phone, and I've been listening to the questions and answers, and everything I was speaking of has been covered. Thank you.
I would just like to say I thank you for the presentations. I have been to all of these locations, and I will say that I was a little bit concerned when I heard about moving, because I do think being Central Fort Myers, I'm not calling it East, it's Central Fort Myers, and having programs where everybody can go to, I think is a good. So I hope we would look at more programs, even though I understand that school is not adequate for you. And then also, because we've already started doing renovations at the school. So we've already started that process to renovate what the needs were. And then going to the Cape, when I'm out there, I hear people always speaking about what can we do? We really need these things, here at our schools, Yamaha, and all of these different businesses. And I was at the Career Source Expo last week, and I was walking around collecting and speaking to everybody there, and everybody was giving the cards because they want to be engaged. So I did give those cards to Ms. Davis and her team, but they want to be engaged with whatever you all are doing and making sure that we have the skilled workers, or give the kids an opportunity to go to whatever pathway that they're looking for. But I think that's a good thing as well. So whatever we can do to help you all, let us know as well, or let me know. And I'm sure my colleagues will be the same, feel the same way, as well as the letters. When you were speaking about letters, I don't know what that looks like or what they need to say. And I just really appreciate what you all do.
And just quickly answer that, I will say that the technical college leadership team is engaged with the Verizon Council and business community. We have done multiple presentations to get where we're at today. And to answer the question, then I'll let John also answer some of this too. But the renovations that are going on now, they're all flex space. Don't fear not that if they move out and we're spending this money there, that we can't use it. The rooms that can be is all multi-use rooms. It will change. The economy is going to change. So if John had something, if he was staying and he had a program in there, he could put a different program in there. It was designed that way, so where you don't all of a sudden welding went away and you can't do nothing else with it. That is not the design of the renovations at Fort Myers Tech.
Okay, so then when I was looking at the presentation that we've seen from Fort Myers Tech, where it shows the hallways and the glass where people can do the bus tours and come in and look at that, what are we looking at? Are we looking at the police training? Are we looking at, who are they looking at?
No,
Who do they wanna
ideally,
be?
you would be looking into, we're moving 3 programs out there to that building currently during the remodel. So the idea would be there's a corridor that runs down the middle of that building. On either side, you would be able to see into that lab. Now, that lab could be anything down the road, but the conception was to view in there for recruiting, for stakeholders, to gather support for the school, kind of a tour without ever disrupting or getting on the other side of that wall. So we could move various programs into that space. Right now, it's being electricity, plumbing, and major appliance are the 3 programs that are going to go in there. But if we could change one of those out easily and add another program if the need were to arise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for the obvious work that you did in preparing this information and gathering from the community. I also want to mention about, I don't think you mentioned this, Todd, but that the PSA serves 5 counties.
That's correct. We're the only certified in Southwest Florida. We are the 5th largest academy in the state. We're the 5th largest fire academy in the state. We're the 5th largest full-time EMT in the state, and we're the only academy in the state of Florida where you have one leadership for all public safety. That usually doesn't happen. It's broke out. Fire and EMS works under a nursing certificate, and public safety and then work out if it's at a traditional college. So we're very unique. We're the only one in the state that has this model.
Right.
And we're very successful. I have to keep 5 sheriffs and about 13 police departments and about 27 fire departments and chiefs happy. So, and that's occurring right now.
And it is occurring, and you're doing a great job, so I want to thank you for that. And we know that you need to have the space that you need to be able to continue to do that as we grow. The other thing I wanted to mention, Mr. Pease, regarding Cape Coral Tech was that the City of Cape Coral Office of Economic and Business Development has contracted with Urban Land Institute to create a panel as the City of Cape Coral now works on updating their strategic plan. And they recognize that we have to have a new vision for the future as we continue to grow, that the needs are increasing daily, that the business community in the Cape is clamoring for just what Charlie described to us, and looking at expansion and growth. And I know that Mr. Pease and myself are both invited to participate in that panel. And so there is interest from the municipalities, and I think that I think our operations people have had some communications with the county also. So as we continue to grow as a community, we are the economic driver, and so we have unique programs here that are filling a very important need. So I want to thank you guys for the work that you continue to do. Thank you. Superintendent Savage.
Just want to say thank you again, gentlemen. Also, the answer is 1964 is the public's, currently that's the former elementary school. 1964, the other piece is just piggyback. I actually was on the phone earlier today with our deputy county manager. So we have really tried to build up the relationship with our municipal partners, and I am very active with Horizon Council as well, and I'll tell you the people that I see more than anyone else out there are these gentlemen, as well as Rita Davis, as well as our high school principals and some of their specific pieces. There's one thing that community conversations result more, and that is the workforce. That is on everyone's mind. They needed it yesterday, so just really a kudos to not just these gentlemen, also our professional wrangler, Cindy McClung. This is the group, the face of it, but there's a multi-divisional effort behind the scenes as they come together as a group to ensure that they're all working, and that's representation from business services, again, operations, academic services, large footprint. The idea being that this is a really critical body of work that for the district, but I just want to validate a lot of what I've heard from the various board members. If we are going at it alone, we are really missing a major opportunity because there's lots of goodwill and there's even dollars and there's commitment, political commitment. There's businesses. Everyone has skin in the game. So great questions today from our board members. I know everyone's been actively taking down information for this. So thank you.
Appreciate you being
Thank you for your
here,
support.
and-
Have a good day.
And right on time, great. Thank you. So moving right along.
Good luck.
Okay, come on.
Thank you.
How are you?
Next on the agenda, I'm sorry, is the update from the Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee. And good afternoon and welcome.
Before we start our formal report, I have to share a bit of history. I think I was trying to remember when, but it had to be at least 25 years ago. And Mary, you may remember this, that we started a program in the Lee County Schools called the Work Skills.
Yes.
And that was in a reaction to a school district and an education attitude across the country that had gone away from vocational education. And we thought that it was important that it come back into schools. So I'm sitting here thinking, wow, this is pretty neat, watching these
It
slides.
is,
So
and welcome,
thank you.
Mr. Schimpf and Ms. Millay.
I hope you keep up the good work being from the industry. I spent the morning spinning a wrench with my diesel mechanic. You only return phone calls all the time to your diesel mechanic and your marine mechanic, I can tell you that. I'm here as chairman of the board of the Independent Sales Tax, Surtax. You want to introduce me, or I'll?
No, I see, we need to put up the presentation for today, so I could sit over there if desired.
Can Cindy help? Can somebody help you?
Would you mind, Cindy? I would really appreciate it, thank you.
Oh, I think I have one of these.
We can start with the introductions while they're doing that. I'm Steve Schimpf. I'm chairman of the Independent Sales Tax Surtax Oversight Committee. ISSOC is the acronym. And I'm here to give you the board report that we give quarterly. The agenda today will cover a little bit of overview of our committee and what it was formulated to do as we started and the surtax was passed. We'll go over our committee agenda and give you an overview of what kind of territory we cover during our meetings. Share with you some results of the surtax sales tax to date. And then I'd like to focus a bit on communications to the public and update you some as to what both the district is doing and what the committee is considering doing. And then I have a recommendation to you for your consideration in the future that's not an urgent matter, but we think it might be important for you to take into account. The next slide, please. To overview the committee, each of you appoint 2 community members to our board. We meet quarterly, just ahead of the end of the fiscal quarter in March, June, September, and December. Our charge is to determine the use and the expenditures of funds from the sales tax as to whether they are consistent with what the voters voted for in the referendum that they passed. To put that simply, to make sure that they go into the 4 areas that were outlined in what was passed and that those funds are not diverted to other uses. We also are asked to make recommendations as to expenditures of sales tax money, and we are asked to make recommendations to the board when it comes to communications to the public. In the policy that outlines our activities that you've put in place, it calls for a quarterly report from either the chair or a designee of the chair. To date, we've been handling that by posting all meetings online and having staff available at your meetings if there are questions from those minutes. In the future, it's our intent to give you a written report every quarter and have either a designee or the chair present I'm thinking that likely you will see the chair of the committee in the fall, that your January, April, and July meeting would have a staff person, and that the chair plus the staff person would be here in October. Obviously, if you wanted the chair to show up a different time, we'd be willing to accommodate that, but we think that that will be sufficient to keep you in the loop. The next slide, please. Our committee meeting activities, our meetings are significantly staff-driven. It took us a year to reach a level where, of the various business people and folks who had joined that board from both the community, and we have a couple of folks who were very familiar with the district, to get a report format that meshed so that our board could grasp in education language how the funds were being expended and they were being expended on. It took a little bit to educate some of us that were less familiar with funding sources and that kind of thing, and get us up to speed. After about a year, we got to the point where we fell into a pretty standard format, and that is that we oversee the revenues that are coming in the door and have a report on the revenues. We have a report on project expenditures, both actual projects that are in process and projects that are seen in the future that will be funded by sales tax money. Those projects always fall within the 4 referendum areas of new construction and major renovations, or safety and security, or technology, or what are capital maintenance projects. We also, at our meetings, entertain a motion every time, specifically 2 motions, one that, in our view, do the projects comply or not comply with the intent of the referendum, and have the expenditures as reported to us comply with the intent of the referendum. I can report to you that we have not had a meeting without both of those motions being passed, and I don't think we have had any negative votes or any protests about that. So, in essence, I'm pleased to report to you that I think staff developed for us, at our request, a format of reporting that would be, I hate using this word because it's so popular these days, but would be reasonably transparent to the eyes of our members that don't live in the school district all the time, and we would have enough information that we could make judgment on behalf of the voters as to whether things were being done in accordance with what they had passed. We do believe that's the case. Beyond that, I'll just share with you some results. We have received through March 7th of 2022 over $267 million from the sales tax. Obviously, that kind of funds coming into the district has the potential, if used properly, to have a huge long-term impact. We've expended $168 million of that. I would tell you that and this is a personal view, it would be interesting if you had your staff pull together a spreadsheet, but I would tell you that a lot of those projects that have been fielded to date are what I would call severely needed catch-up. Roofs that were leaking, electrical gear that was shot, air conditioning systems that were limping along, some without parts. The district was in pretty tough shape. We're making headway on a lot of the things in existing facilities that are needed. 100% of the schools in the district have received some measure of benefit from the surtax to date. We think that's very important. 3,783 students have been seated. Those are new classroom seats that have been built with surtax money. From inception to date, we've collected the estimated and actual. The estimated coming in the door was $247 million. We've collected $266, and we have found that our numbers, the projections that have been done by staff, that drive the planning exercise have been what I would call reasonably accurate, if not very accurate, as a businessman. If I were running a business and had projections from my staff at that level, I'd feel good about it. Our major construction and renovation projects, as I mentioned, were over 3,000 seats. That's 3% of the district chairs. We've had 6 major projects that have been at least fully funded or partially funded, substantially funded by sales tax revenue. They include Gateway High, Lehigh Acres Middle, Franklin Park, Fort Myers Technical, and Riverdale High School. We also, the renovation that you see mentioned there is at Lehigh Senior High School. In the safety, security, and technology area, I can't give you a lot of specifics about the security expenditures because those are not shared to the public for safety reasons, but we do receive a report every time from the people that are in charge of that. I can tell you that every time I'm on a school district, I feel like I'm closely watched and monitored, and that's a good thing. Don't know that's necessary in my part, but I feel like it's a good thing all the time for everybody. Every district campus, again, has been upgraded in terms of security. And candidly, the COVID response that the Lee County School District was able to field was substantially helped from the safety funds from the sales tax. We were able to do some things with safety funds that made a lot of sense during COVID. In the technology area, there's been $43 million, touch over that, expended to date. Again, 100% of the schools have had a benefit. Some of that has been from student station technology, other, you hear the expression of whiteboard or larger classroom technology that's been able to field with that money. I will share with you anecdotally that at one point in time, one of our members asked the technology person, how many, what do they call the Chromebooks? How many Chromebooks were put in students' hands during COVID that would have not otherwise had a Chromebook had the sales tax not been passed? And I think that number, they didn't have it off the top of their head, but I think his estimate was like 14,000 kids got a Chromebook because we had the sales tax initiative, and those funds would have obviously had been grabbed from another spot. The capital maintenance projects have totaled over $52 million. Anything from chillers and switchgear to cabinets to replacement roofs to replacing a lot of gutters and downspouts that are defective and aging. You know, they age out faster than the buildings with stainless steel, elevator modernizations, emergency generators, walkway covers, the list goes on and on. Your maintenance department has been extremely active, both with outside contracting for a lot of those projects or doing things internally. A lot of paving going on, including sports facilities. In the area of communications, to date, the communications about the sales tax initiative has been predominantly driven by the staff from the district. They have a website which people can visit. They also have put out some press releases, and there have been some community presentations so far. In process, we just approved, or the district just approved, an expenditure with FGCU to do an economic study on the impact of the surtax to date in terms of the greater economy. Obviously, when you spend $1 on a capital project, it multiplies over and makes our economy grow. We hope to take that forward to the public. And then our committee in the March meeting identified a subcommittee of 6 of our 14 members that are going to work on if we were to step out as individuals into the community and make reports, in what format and in what venues should we do that in an effort to keep the public informed from the perspective of not necessarily a district person, but a private individual who's making that report. We look to offer that to you in October when the chairman and myself will come back and give you that report, and we're hoping you approve, and what we come up with will be well received. In terms of the recommendation and something for you folks to consider, In your board policy, and I should be able to just rattle this off, I carry these numbers around on top of my head all the time. In board policy 1.26, section 4F3, if you read that, you will see that the committee, in quotes, is supposed to make recommendations, in quotes, regarding the district's use and expenditure of surtax proceeds. Currently, within the district, and I'm sure you're all aware, there is a district capital committee that reviews capital projects and makes recommendations. There are board advisory committees predominantly comprised of people who are from outside the district and supported by staff on both construction and finance. And that does include many, many community members who have expertise that come in to bring that expertise to you. On significant projects that will affect particular communities, there are workshops, there are town halls, and there's public input taken. And then, of course, you are responsible to take the board action to approve those capital expenditures as they occur. We believe that it's not the place of our committee to make recommendations to you as to the expenditures at that level of the sales tax funds. We believe that we should be the watchdog on behalf of the voter to say it's being expended properly, but our committee of 14 is not equipped to have the specifics of the needs of the district. And that by potentially injecting us into that with that wording, you could create confusion in the future as to where the public should go to. We did have one member of the public come to us and talk about a specific school and its needs. Her comments were right on point. They were very constructive, but she was in the wrong spot. And she was probably in the wrong spot because of the wording or the impression that we have control over how those funds are expended. We do not. So if you could work with council to clean up that policy, we think it would be in the best interest of everybody. Obviously, it's not an urgent matter, but it's just a piece of housekeeping. With that, I'd open it up for questions. And the reason Susan is here is because she knows everything. I just told you everything I know, maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Schimpf. Ms. Jordan and Ms. Gittens.
Okay, I just really want to say thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this, and I think this is great because the community does need to see this and hear this. And so with you all willing to go out there and share our story as well, I think that is fabulous. Now, as far as the policy, Mr. Pre-Bruno, is that something that was in statute that the word?
I'm going to have to take a look at that, and then I will make sure I get back to the board.
Okay, thank you. But I just really appreciate you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the thing that piqued my interest the most was when you talked about the committee coming back in October to present to us about how you could go out into the community. The reason that is so exciting to me is that I'm always saying we have to tell our story to the community in non-edukeys. And the fact that, you know, the non-educators that are involved with the project would be able to speak to community members as themselves and without the education piece, I think is just extremely helpful to the fact of us having the house sin tax, not having the confusion among some community members as to what it does and what it doesn't do. And I think hearing it from you and your team is going to be extremely helpful to everyone. I appreciate that.
14 members are there because they believe that the district is substantially benefiting from the tax and that they'd like to reach out and encourage the community to see that as being an ongoing thing.
Awesome.
It's having a huge impact.
I think it will. On slide 7, I don't know, Cindy, if you can go back to that. What struck me on this, and people in the community that speak to me about the half-cent tax and saying that the overall goal in their mind and voting for it was, quote unquote, to build schools that we did not have the money to build. And looking at this slide and seeing that, there's an increase, a 3% increase in seats. That's good, but looking at it from the big picture, it does not jump out to say, look what great we're doing, if you understand what I'm saying. And we have built, all the schools that we have down here. But the question that always comes up is, when we put the sign out that says your house and sales tax at work, how much of that are we talking about? And I don't know if it's that difficult to find, but I've seen in other districts, they will have a similar sign, your taxes at work, but they will have some type of a breakdown of it.
I would tell you that this short a period of time into the tax cycle, this is a 10-year piece of legislation, I guess it is, not legislation, but an approval.
Right.
If you look at the $168 million number that we've expended to date, $52 million of that has gone into capital maintenance. That's not real visible in the eyes of the taxpayer as a new school would be. 39 has gone into security, 43 has gone into technology. So if you take those numbers, 40, 40, and 50, 130 of that 168 has been expended on things that to date needed to happen because of the timing of the passage of the district. And I would expect you to see more and more construction of new student stations.
And I totally agree with you. What I'm saying is, as you are thinking and formulating the message to go out to the public, to consider that if they see this, that's what they see. They don't necessarily see and understand the maintenance piece, because most of the statement when it was being, discussed in the community was the fact that we need more schools and we can't afford to. And that's what's stuck in a lot of people's heads. So that's what they're looking at. So your message has to maybe start with that piece that you just said, and how fixing and maintaining and fixing the chillers and all that means that we may not have to build this school over here, another school over here as soon, because we're taking care of the ones that we have. And it's just all in the way the message is presented.
Share you that message will be easier and easier to convey as time rolls on, and that ratio kicks more toward new construction, visible construction.
Exactly.
If you look at the projects that are in the hopper now,
Okay.
Franklin Park, they're not turning dirt yet, but that's going to happen. The Fort Myers Technical School, the Riverdale High School, a number of these very, very significant projects, Cypress Lake Middle School, are in the early planning stages, and they'll kick.
Right.
There has been some discussion at our committee level that as the 10-year capital plan and the projections of sales tax funds occurs currently, that toward the tail end of it, a significant amount of our budget will be expended on retiring the debt by the end of the 10-year period that's been moved up to have projects hit the ground sooner.
To kind of keep up with that.
It's been expressed by our committee to staff that they may consider taking some hard construction dollar projects and moving that to the tail end of the time period in order to cater to the message exactly that the public needs to see, that in fact there's been real benefit. So we're...
And that would be perfect. We're nearing the 5-year mark. So at that point would be an excellent time to say we could do projections. Actually, the first 5 years we did this, and if we are on target by projections, by the end of this we would be able to do that. And that's all I'm saying is the word you don't like, the transparency word, but it is transparency and simplistic is what I think would be a good.
An important thing to get across the public is that the capital needs of the district are very dynamic.
Right. And various.
It's a constantly changing environment in terms of where people are headed and also what we have to deal with.
Thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you. Superintendent Savage, Ms. Morgan, and then Ms. Patrica.
Yeah, just want to kind of add some more to that conversation. One of the documents I really love the most, I think, in the district, because it really helps spell things out for people, is our capital plan. You know, every year we go back and revise it. And again, it's a 5-year piece, a 5-year look, but you know, I've drawn a lot of attention to page 97 in the current capital plan, because that really highlights all the big new construction. Those are the really expensive projects that are not just this year, but the next 5 years. The page preceding it, 96, really takes a look at all the revenue sources, of course. So rather than focusing exclusively on the sales tax, that's obviously the objective here today. It's to see the integral piece of the capital plan that would not be possible but not for the sales tax. You really see that outlined, what the actuals, what the projections are. It really then identifies all the other capital sources. That way, it's not a fixation on, because essentially we have all the revenues and then we have all the appropriations. And this kind of consolidates all that in a very coherent, single page type of format. And then the 97 is a page I've brought up numerous times here that really goes over the big construction projects. But then when you go to the next page, even to 98, this one then breaks down a lot of the small capital projects. When we talk about the safety appropriations, you talk about the technology appropriations. So in a very simple glance, in a single page, you can really see the totality of all the capital work, and you really get an idea of just how much that sales tax is a vital part of that piece. So just want to kind of add that, because that is public-facing documents that we have. Again, we share those with our community partners as well. The county is aware of that. It just kind of tells what we're doing now and the future, and it gets updated every single year. So I just wanted to highlight those are great tools that are out there that aren't just focused on sales tax, but it's a big piece of it.
Thank you, Dr. Savage. Ms. Morgan.
Yeah, so I also want to thank you for volunteering to go out and talk to the community. I think that's a great gift to us. I really appreciate that.
You mean my volunteering? I'm just an old retired guy, so.
Here.
I don't know if you all have seen the PowerPoint that was given to us on March 29th, future enrollment projections, growth, development. I think if you are thinking about going out and talking to the community, having a sense of what we saw in terms of what's coming in growth and where, will give some forward perspective in terms of where we may need to be 10 years from now, or 5 years from now. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at you, Ms. Malay. Okay. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much. Ms. Patrica.
So it's rare that I would say that I'm delighted about anything, but I am delighted that you are here today. Really, I'm genuinely delighted, and for you to say that if you were running a business, to see the projections versus actual, you would be happy with that as someone who would be running a business. That's also very delightful to me, because you have run a business, a very successful business at a very high level. And I believe that you and many of your colleagues on the committee bring automatic credibility to the committee. You, Steve Shimp, going out into the public and saying, to your recollection, there's never been a negative vote or a protest in terms of how this money is being spent, I think speaks volumes to the community. I wish, to a certain extent, that we could get the word out more, and I hear that that's sort of your goal going forward, because I do continue to receive feedback from naysayers telling me that we're wasting the money and that it's not being spent how we promised that it would be spent. And I'm hearing you say the complete opposite. What I'd like to ask the superintendent to do is, can we get today's presentation out on social media so that, I know we do those half-penny sales tax or those sales tax updates. I think this is the kind of a presentation that would sort of quiet some of those naysayers. Go ahead.
I would tell you that the information presented today is already available to the public if they'd fire up their computers and go to the website and look at it. It's there. Right. They don't seek it. When folks find out I'm involved in this thing, and people will say, well, how's it all working down at the district? I'm able to tell them that really the district people that we've dealt with have been very professional, and it's quite impressive how well things are being handled and kept track of and managed. The average person going into the ballot box won't look at your website. They, I think they will listen to their teachers, the teachers that they know. I think they'll listen to their grandchildren, in my instance. You know, how's your school doing? Has anything happened that's new? I think there are a lot of opportunities, but the voter, you can feed them till they're blue in the face with all your numbers and your specific economic projections in the district. That doesn't absorb, and it's sad, but you can't expect the average person to be an expert on how capital funds work versus operating funds work. Just not versus how you string debt over time and pay it back. So we hope to come up with something that's a little more targeted to what will fit to what the person really wants the answers to. So, and it's going to be a task. I hope I can report we have something for you in October. We'll see.
Well, I think you just sort of detailed why I'm not typically delighted at work, because it is really hard to share the message and help people to understand those differences that you talked about. I just really want to express my gratitude for the time and the expertise that you bring to this, you and your colleagues. We really couldn't be doing this without you, so thank you.
You're one of 14 sitting in front of you. There's other members that are really doing a good job for it.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you very much for your insight and your time, even though you're retired. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
My mechanic is still on the boat, and I was spinning a wrench with him this morning. I'm going back to the bilge afterwards.
Okay. There you go. Enjoy that. Thank you, Ms. Millay. Thank you. Okay. So next on the agenda. Oh, she had a major a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, she still needs an upgrade. So this is going to be extremely interesting to me. Health instruction materials. And we have Alicia Roy, teacher on assignment, health curriculum, Dr. Bethany Quisenberry, Lori Houchin, and Candace Oliveto to present today. Welcome and thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for that. So we are very excited to be here today to present to you our comprehensive health education and update on our resources. So as we come before this board every year to bring forward our textbook adoption materials, there was a change to legislation for this school year for required instruction that requires every year annually we bring forward our health resources in which we utilize to teach any of the reproductive health, any HIV, any disease, family health to the board, and the board needs to approve that. So before we go forth and put the agenda item on for the board to approve, we thought it would be beneficial today to do an overview of the resources that we're utilizing and also some of the changes that have happened in legislation. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Alicia Roy, our health teacher on assignment.
Good afternoon. I know you guys have not heard me ever tell you about the history of comprehensive health education in the state of Florida. So I'm going to try not to repeat myself as I have many times before. We're nearing 50 years with comprehensive health education in the state of Florida. The first legislation occurred in 1973, and within 5 years they were wanting to become a model for all other states here in Florida. The most recent, and really over the last 30 years, more than 30 years, legislation has basically listed everything that you see here with the addition of things that have come along the way. You know, it wasn't until the 80s that we had to be concerned about HIV/AIDS education. It wasn't until later that they instituted teen dating violence education. We do want to stress that even though we are a comprehensive health education district, that, you know, sexual abstinence is the expected standard within our district, and it is not the only topic covered in health education, which we'll continue on with that a little bit more. Some of those additional statutes, again, were earmarked because of certain needs, increases in substance use and abuse, added J to the list, again, the acquired immune deficiency syndrome, and then we, of course, added in our district wellness policies with physical education and nutrition. So back in 2019, it was a very busy year with the State Board of Education. We had 3 rules added in. We had the mandate for the mental emotional health, which was 5 hours for grades 6 through 12. We had the substance use and abuse education that was K to 12, and then we had the child/human trafficking prevention, also K to 12. As of this past summer, we have also added first aid training in public schools. This is a requirement for students to get education on CPR, hands-only CPR, first aid training, and to not certify the students, but to allow them to be able to demonstrate that they can adequately perform chest compressions. And we have partnered with the American Heart Association, as have several other counties that you can see listed here, to be able to get this done in a very efficient manner. We had a donation of 16 CPR and first aid anywhere kits that were donated to the district. We received those back in February. At the same time, we trained about 100 staff members on CPR. We didn't certify them. We just gave them the training, and for them to know that any CPR is better than no CPR, I think that's one of the biggest fears for a lot of people. So I think the kids are going to catch on to this pretty quickly. Last thing I want to mention is remember that comprehensive health education incorporates all of these different topics. It is not a one-topic curriculum. It incorporates a lot of different areas, and I think I'm passing it to Dr. Quisenberry for elementary.
Off instead of turning on. Good afternoon. So for elementary, as Leisha just spoke to, there were new pieces of legislation. So for, as you see, K-5 Safe and Smarter Kids, we use that curriculum to be able to cover the child trafficking prevention. What the team has done is they have provided a playlist inside of our teacher launchpad. And so although the teachers have curriculum in their classrooms, we provide a script for which pieces of those curriculum to pull out. For the Safe and Smarter Kids, it's not a full year curriculum. It really only takes, depending on how much time the schools do a lesson each time, it really only takes a couple of weeks of maybe 30 minutes. Most of the schools wait until around this time, and then they start doing it by the grade level, where they pull all of the kids together, and then they offer those lessons. The second piece, also guided by legislation, is Generation RX, substance use and abuse. And so Generation RX actually is a 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade program, but we use some of those pieces to create our own program to cover legislation in K1 and 2, and that is a 45, a one-time 45 to 90-minute, depending on the way that the school does it, one-time lesson, and it really focuses on what is medicine, especially for our younger students. What is medicine? What is drugs? When is it appropriate to take medicine? Who should you take medicine from? Those types of pieces. It doesn't really go into depth of what we would consider drugs and substance abuse. And then same with the Safe and Smarter Kids. It really focuses on using your voice, how to stay safe, kind of like what in the old days when I was in school, stranger danger type of curriculum, right? And so again, it does not go into depth of some of those other pieces that Ms. Alivedo spoke to. I just want to reiterate that we do not teach any sexuality in elementary school, and so to speak to that legislation that Candace was speaking to, for you to reapprove every year, the elementary pieces will not need to be built in there, because those pieces are not in elementary, not in any of our elementary curriculum. So then the second piece that we wanted to be able to speak to, go ahead. is an exciting supplemental program. So, you know, in the past years, we had the Healthy Living Lab, which was a collaboration with food services. At the school level, it was a great program. Some of the food services teachers came out to the schools and did a nutrition lesson for all of our students, and those teachers have since retired, and so we are working to rebuild that program. Leisha is spearheading that along with other members in our curriculum department, and utilizing some of our community groups such as UF-IFAS to be able to build a full nutrition program that will again be supplemental, but that will go out to the schools and to be able to continue that support. So we're excited about that partnership. And I'm going to turn it over to Lori Houchin for middle school.
Good afternoon. So this is our core text that we use for middle school health. They can take health for in two different ways. So by semester with a certified health teacher in 6th grade, or they can take year-long, and we provide quite a bit of intensive assistance with Leisha for the peer counseling teachers, as they are not typically certified in health. In addition, schools can choose to offer health in 7th grade and 8th grade, and those would be semester courses as well. The areas of nutrition or instructional focus are, as you see there, the family life, those are eligible for opt-out, as well as communicable diseases. And just so you know that we are working toward that appearing in focus with all of the other forms for parents to look at the beginning of the year. But because I know that is a lot of forms, we will also, through the parent portal and in our curriculum maps and through a letter, we send home 30 days prior to those topics being taught, so that the parent has an opportunity again to either opt in if they opted out by mistake, or opt out if they choose so to do as well. So in peer counseling, that is a year-long course, and so those are taught typically in 4th quarter, so we would be communicating with parents 3rd quarter. And in health, it appears in 2nd quarter, so we communicate 1st quarter, so that they have the opportunity to opt out.
So for the high school, very similar to the middle school. What you see on the screen is the currently adopted textbook for our high school Hope course there. It is the Glencoe Florida Health, and that was adopted. It went through the 14-15 year, so we've had that in implementation since 15-16. There are two course codes that we utilize at the high school level for Hope, and that's going to be the core and PE variation. Schools use this across the district in different manners. Some will alternate, as these are year-long courses, between physical education pieces and specific health standards that you're going to see there. In addition, though, there are opportunities for our high school students not to sit in the actual course, but to have this course waived. So in the presentation is actually linked out to our student progression plan of the different approved waivers that students have. And something to note here is it's a 912 course code, and enrolled currently, we have 13% of our students at high school that take this course. So this is just a piece. A lot of our students meet this waiver requirement in other ways. Just like in middle school, and as you heard Leisha talk about, there are a plethora of what information being covered inside of our health classrooms. So here on the screen are the topics which are instructed, but also those topics in which families are able to opt out of. So there are specific units of study, again, linked out. One of the things, though, that was really important this year, and I've got to say thank you to Leisha for this one, is there's been a lot of conversation around the opt-out and those units of study, but putting together a more comprehensive letter for families to detail out what is actually taught inside that unit of study. Sometimes we hear the words, but don't really understand what's being taught inside there. So a sample on the screen is a letter that will be going home in the future. As you heard Ms. Houchin talk about putting that form in focus. We're afraid families may be completing forms and not understanding exactly what they're signing. So the letter that will go home 30 days in advance looks like this one on the screen that we sent home this year that details out the unit of study. So it points them back to our curriculum maps, but really highlights those features of what is inside of that unit. So with that, Alicia left us with a quote on here that ties back. She always does. But we really want to close it with our next steps. On the May 10th board meeting, we will have a public hearing, and this is where we'll seek for board approval. And just going back to statute, we thought it was important to share with you what's happening K-12 as those required legislative. But the two pieces of material that we're going to be looking for this board to approve are the middle school curriculum and the high school curriculum. As you heard Dr. Quisenberry speak about the legislative, we don't have any curriculum pieces that address those. So those will be the two curriculum pieces we're bringing back before you. So with that, we will open it up to any questions.
Okay, Ms. Gittens?
Thank you very much. Glad to see all of you again. And the question I have is about, there's two things. One is the opt-out, opt-in. And Candace, at one point you said that someone could opt in, then they could opt out and then opt in again. Some parents like the idea of being able to opt in. So, and I noticed on the slide, it just says the opt out.
The way the legislation was written is specifically to opt out. So we've written the form in the manner that meets what we're required to do based upon the legislation, is that they have the ability to opt out of those units of study. But that's why we added the piece, though, before it's actually taught that family members, if they choose or wanted more information, it would provide that letter home that if they wanted to opt back in, they would be able to do so. But legislation specifically states an opt-out form.
And the last question has to do with the legislation. I think as there's more and more legislation coming out, for us to be as clear as possible that we are, adhering to the legislation. And is there some way in this that parents can see before they would say, well, you're not doing this? We can say, yes, this part of the legislation is right here in this section. Is there any type of a comparative or a link to a section of the legislation on your explanation?
So right now we just have a piece that's linked to the Parents' Bill of Rights where that part was. We can absolutely explore, though, linking it to our curriculum and instruction page as well, and also updating our instructional materials that points to this new required legislation of us bringing these materials before you. So yes, we can look at adding it to that place as well, since that's where we point parents to most frequently in the parent portal, is back to our curriculum and instruction page.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Board members, any other questions or comments?
I want to comment.
Yes, Ms. Vaughn.
This is a topic I've been interested in for many years. As a matter of fact, it takes time that I was on the board, and I have to say that the person that I was listening to at that time was Ms. Alicia Roy. I would say of knowledge, some of the things that not pointed out. I think
Ms. Vaughn.
Ms. Vaughn, you're breaking up.
Ms. Vaughn, you're breaking up. I'm going to call you on my phone and put you in the meeting through my phone, okay? If you hang up, I will call you right back. This is Kathy.
I will hang up. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for your patience, ladies. In the meantime, I'll just say, I want to thank Leisha for her work with the health curriculum, with helping me with comprehensive health education for the last 9 or 10 years, and for affecting the partnership with UF-IFAS. And thank you very much. You're amazing.
And I just wanted, while we're trying to get Ms. Vaughn to be able to connect up as well, just wanted to give a specific thank you to Leisha as well. I mean, the entire team, but Leisha, you know, even just the quote that you chose to put in there, it's very easy to treat, you know, our curriculum oftentimes as just kind of a, you know, each thing is important, and there's a little bit sometimes the idea of it being a token effort. The reality is, if we don't have our health, if we send our students to learn all the different content areas that they learn, but if they don't have the healthy habits and the discipline that it takes to make good choices that can allow them to be sustainable, I think it's not just for our kids, even our workforce. So just real credit that this is a really important standalone aspect of it in your leadership, not just here locally, but your engagement with the state. Just really wanted to thank you as well.
Thank you.
I think we have her now.
Yes, we have her, Ms. Fisher. Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Go ahead, you can speak.
Okay, it's a little hard at this point for me to hear the people at the dais, but I'll turn up my volume in a minute. What I started to say was that the topic of health education in our schools has been one that I've been interested in since well before I was ever a board member, and I just want to, all of the ladies that are there do a great job, but I wanted to send particular kudos to Miss Leisha Roy, because she is the one that I have been listening to her reports. I caught her little joke about that she never presents on this for a really long time. And one of the things that I remember she talked about in the past is the mistaken notion by many people that when the schools deal with sexuality education, that it actually increases promiscuity and everything that goes along with that. What I wanted to ask her is if she has any kind of data on any kind of data that relates to health education being taught in the schools, and which includes sexuality education as appropriate for the age group, in reducing high numbers of pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, etc. Because I know at one point, a number of years ago, Lee County had quite a high rate of these issues.
So, Ms. Vaughn, I know I'm good, but I'm not that good to be able to rattle those numbers right off the top of my head. But I can assure you they are out there. It's whether you're talking about sex education, whether you're talking about suicide prevention, all the data supports that educating kids does not increase the risk of those things occurring. It actually decreases. And I absolutely will get you the data on that. I actually just had a long conversation with Dr. Alyssa Barr, who was part of the CDC grant that we were under because of our high teen pregnancy, repeat teen pregnancy, and STD rates a few years back. And I guarantee you she will get those numbers out to me in no time flat. So I will make sure that you receive those. We'll put it in the board update, according to Ms. Alivedo.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If there are no other comments or questions.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I wanted to make one more comment. I am very glad that the law specifically says opt out. I addressed this one other time a while back when that discussion, opt-in, opt-out, was being held, and just from my experience, there would be a lot of people who perhaps would not have a wish of opting out, that just because of our busy lives might forget to opt in or not get the message. And I think the parents that are worried about the school district indoctrinating children or the school district teaching things that rightly belong in the home, which is, of course, their prerogative, that they follow these things, and I think it makes a whole lot less administrative difficulties for the way the law is written. So I'm glad that was brought up, and I see that as a benefit. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Yes.
One thing I just want to mention, everything that I've learned from the state and the relationships that I've had there is because the reason that it's an opt-out and not an opt-in is because the opt-out only allows for those topics that you see in the Parent Bill of Rights, the sexuality education and the disease prevention. It does not allow to opt out of the actual health course requirements. All the other parts of that statute, the students still need to receive. So that's the reasoning behind it being an opt-out rather than an opt-in.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate it. Ladies, thank you for your presentation, and we wish you a good afternoon. Next on the agenda, we have Bonfire demonstration. Tracy Adams, Director of Procurement Services. And I see Ms. Millay coming with her. Thank you. Ladies.
Really close to you. Pull it forward. Pull it really close. Can you hear me? Okay. Very good. Good afternoon. Thank you guys for having us today. My name is Tracy Adams, Procurement Director. This is Susan Millay, Executive Director of Business Services. So today I'm doing a presentation about our online portal for Bonfire. Let's let her get set up. Kidding. There you go. Thank you. You're welcome. 12. Yeah. There you go. Sorry, I started a little premature. Okay, I think we're on track now. So we are excited to do this presentation today to talk to you about Bonfire, which is our online tool for procurement. We're happy that you're interested in learning more about this. That's fine. Okay, so the slide that you're looking at right now is a life cycle of the procurement process. Today we're focusing on the how all parties involved, public, staff, evaluation committee members will use Bonfire.
Ms. Adams, could you raise your voice or pull your microphone really close? Thank you.
How's that?
Thank you.
Is that on?
Oh,
okay.
much better. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, so next slide. So what is Bonfire? So I will just, a little history. Back in September of 2020, we released our very first solicitation through Bonfire. And since then, we have managed 63 solicitations through Bonfire. So things that you can do on this in this tool. Is it too loud?
No, you're good.
Okay. You can advertise. We can advertise all of our solicitation. Vendors communicate through the portal, and things that we can do. We receive solicitations, we evaluate, and we score solicitations, and we also store all of our solicitations and we use it as a repository.
Conflict of interest. Conflict of interest on that.
Oh, yeah, okay. So the third bullet is one that we also are going to read to you. So it requires all selection committee members to sign off saying that they do not have a conflict of interest with any of the vendors that they are reviewing. So if you're part of the selection committee member, you have to verify that you don't have a conflict of interest, and that's done through Bonfire. So what you're seeing here is a visual of one solicitation. This was actually a solicitation that we did for the construction management RFQ for the re-roofing of this building. That's just one solicitation, again, for the construction management services, and it's about 2 feet tall. So like I said, we've done 63 of these so far. So imagine 63 stacks like that since 2020. That's how much paper that we've saved. And that's just an example of what the vendor has to submit. So since we use the online tool, we also don't have to print as much paper at the district. So it saves a lot of paper, a lot of money for the vendors, because those books are very expensive. Each time that we do a solicitation, vendors have to submit at least 6 copies, and the reason is so that each reviewer can have a book to review, so now it's online. Another way it saves money is vendors don't have to drop off their solicitations, they don't have to mail them, so there's no shipping involved. It's just they just upload their proposals and they hit submit, and it's all electronic. So things that registered vendors can see in Bonfire, depending on where we are in the process, so before submittals are due, vendors can view and download all the published documents. They can view the addendums, any sign-in sheets for the mandatory pre-submission meetings. Then after we receive their submittals, they can still see everything that they could see before, and then in addition, they can see notice of the shortlist, notice of any awards, and bid tabulations and scoring documents depending on what type of solicitation. So you all had, I think you were able to review this in advance of the meeting. So I don't know if you all watched the tutorial. We can play that for you now if you wish, or we can skip that part. Would you like us to play it? You want to skip it? Okay, very good. Anybody wish to see it? Okay. So basically, it was a tutorial to show you how you could register as a vendor in Bonfire. So things that unregistered vendors can see in Bonfire, they can see the open opportunities, so they can see that we have a solicitation out there. They can also see instructions on how they can register as a vendor. It's free to register, so once that they create their account, then they're able to view solicitation documents, they're able to download documents and things like that. So what can SDLC selection committee members view in Bonfire? So first, for every solicitation, there is a unique committee that's established, typically by the department that is requesting the solicitation, and members are defined by the departments typically. So things that can be seen in Bonfire by the selection committee are all the documents that procurement post. They can also see, send and receive messages about 2 other selection committee members, so long as they are part of this particular project. They can also see the scoring criteria and proposals and references that were submitted by vendors. So then things that selection committee members cannot view in Bonfire are any of the financials. They cannot see the forms. And when we talk about the forms, it's like their insurance forms and debarment forms, things like that. Those are all validated through procurement. They can also see how vendors, they cannot see how their other selection committee members are scoring, and they cannot view solicitations that they are not assigned to. So then this is the tutorial to show, this is actually the tutorial that we email to each selection committee member that's assigned to the construction RFQs, so that they have instructions on how they can view the solicitations in advance of the public scoring meetings that we would have. And I know you all have a lot of questions, so I'm ready.
Okay, so Ms. Gittens.
How come I'm always first, you guys?
Because you have your hand up first.
I know. I'm just teasing. Good afternoon, ladies, and thank you. Couple of questions. I had asked for this workshop a while back because I had gone into Bonfire and kind of got lost up in there. But anyway, so one thing is you mentioned with the scores. Does the program calculate the scores from the submissions that you receive?
So the procurement agents build the scoring criteria that's typically established by a committee prior, and that information is put into Bonfire, and typically it's a 100% that they would have, that would be a perfect score basically. But everything is weighted. So the way the scoring if you watched that tutorial, you saw that we asked the committee to use 0, 5, 8, and 10. 0 does not meet, 5 partially meets, 8 meets, 10 exceeds. So that is the structure and how they are to score. And then Bonfire actually does all the calculations and comes up with the totals.
So they also do theirs on Bonfire. So my question is, does it trigger if there are all zeros or all tens? Is there some type of flagging or whatever in that particular situation?
It will show if there's a discrepancy. If someone gives, everybody gives a 10 and then one person gives a 0, there would be a discrepancy.
And what happens, is that then given back to the committee to discuss, or back to the person that gave the discrepancy figures?
Typically what we would do is we would go to that evaluator during the meeting and say, did you mean to give this score? And let them tell us yes or no. Because we can't really tell them how to score, and we can't tell them how everybody else is scoring.
And I guess what I'm getting at too, and I understand that, but if some, out of 10 proposals and other people give an individual maybe even 7, 8, or 9, or even a 5, and then there's one that's just straight zeros. Does that not trigger some other?
It would, and typically when we would ask the question, they would say, oh, yeah, I messed up, or I missed that one, or something like that.
Okay, and how often are the members of this committee rotated?
Again, they're always different. So the departments, typically, if it's a maintenance solicitation that we're doing, then maintenance would help us come up with the committee. And it would depend on what type that it was. So if it's cabinets or something like that, then they would have someone who is an expert at cabinets sit on the committee.
So if you're doing a elementary school, you would have elementary principals or teachers or whatever on that committee?
Right. So for our requests for qualifications, which are construction solicitations, we actually have a spreadsheet, a Google Doc that we have, and we send it to all the chiefs and the executive directors, both, and they would sign up. They would say, okay, this is a middle school, so every executive would sign someone from their department up, or from their area up.
And it's kind of just random, but in the department who they choose?
Yes, and like we just did Cape Coral Tech, I think that's coming tonight, so Mr. Peace sat on that committee.
So is it, I've noticed that from time to time there are some companies that just consistently have the highest score. And I know we've had discussions about the presentations or no presentation, and how slick this company is to this company's presentation and all that. How does that filter into this?
So the first part, there's two scoring parts and I'm talking specifically for requests for qualifications. The first review is the review of the written responses, so those are scored, and based on that, they come up with the short list. The committee determines, let's just say there's 8 that's submitted. The committee determines how many they want to call in for presentation, so it would have to be the top-ranked 5 or the top-ranked 4. So then the scoring starts over, and this This is part of the, we created this process with the help of, well, of course, we looked at what other school districts are doing similar size. We also met with the CAC committee. We got a lot of input from the vendors, so that's how this was created. So then the second piece, like I said, was the scoring of the presentations. Presentations then start over at 0. So they have a fresh, clean slate. If I have no solicitations at the time, like right now I have an RFQ on the street, but if I didn't have any RFQs on the street, vendors can ask me for a debriefing and figure out how they can improve. And they always do public records requests. We encourage them to do that so that they can improve and see what their competition's doing, see what they can do better and things like that. But the debriefings really do help, but unfortunately we can't do them if we have a live solicitation on the street because it's just not fair.
Okay, thank you very much, very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any other questions or comments? Ms. Giovanelli.
Thank you so much for that. I've been looking forward to this presentation because I too tried to play around with it and wasn't very successful. So and you answered, this presentation answered some of my questions. How many districts actually use Bonfire? Do we know? Other school districts, do we know that?
I really don't know how many, but I can reach out and find out.
Yeah, I would be curious, or at least maybe a program similar. Just out of, I see that it streamlines everything for you, and I think that's great, and for also the vendor. I was just curious how common the program is. Do we have to pay for that program?
We do.
Do we know how much that is?
It's like about 50,000. I think it's like less than 60,000
for the
for the procurement team to have a seat. They call it a seat.
Okay, and then that's just the startup. That was the initial. Do we have to do we annually pay for something or?
That is the annual fee. Yes.
Oh, so we pay $60,000 a year for it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Was that, then I have to go back, was that an RFQ or,
No, because what we did, because it's technology, it's been exempt, but what we ended up doing, we interviewed a bunch of different companies, had them come in, do presentations. We worked really closely with ERP to see if it was something, that would work good with our system and stuff, and that's when we determined it was a group of people kind of vetted it.
Okay, so that's how we even went with that kind of with Bonfire versus another one. Okay.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
If I could add just a second there, there are a couple of other competitive platforms with this, and the trends that we're seeing are the school districts all more and more going to online bid submittal tools, and those other products were evaluated, and also the cost of those and the maintenance effort was evaluated as well.
Okay. So during the process, how does it work? So do you get the vendor applies? If you could just walk me through the process.
Sure.
Because I'm just curious where the committee comes in and, and the scoring and how that works.
Okay, so first of all, there would have to be a need. The department would reach out to procurement. We would do whatever type of solicitation, let's just say it's an ITN, we would have a kickoff meeting. We would select the committee, and then the procurement agent then would upload everything into Bonfire. We would send a notification out through Bonfire, letting the vendors know that the documents have been posted and are ready to be downloaded. And then we have all of our dates and everything set up in Bonfire, all of our scoring criteria. Our committee is established in Bonfire, and we give them permissions of what they can view because, again, like I said, they can't see the financials. Well, how can they not see the financials? Because they're actually a separate upload by the vendor, and they're locked for anybody outside of procurement. So that's how that part works. After we receive the submittals, the evaluation committee gets together. Well, actually, they can review the responses in advance. We send that email out with the tutorial, letting them know that the documents are ready for them to review. They have a worksheet that they can download and fill out. They bring that worksheet to the public scoring meeting, and then that's when we open it up in Bonfire for them to score. After that, we determine how many we want to call in for presentations or interviews, and then we invite those vendors in. Once that they interview, the committee again will have a worksheet during each interview, and after all have finished, we have another public scoring meeting. They'll use their worksheets to put their scores into Bonfire.
Okay, so the committee's together when they score?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not really done privately or
No, you cannot score privately, no.
Okay.
And they, you know, there's a cone of silence from the time that we release it until the time the board approves it, so that's another piece of it.
Say that again, I'm sorry?
We're in the cone of silence from the time that we release a solicitation until board approval.
And define what cone of silence means.
As in other words, the committee cannot talk to their peers, they cannot talk to the outside public. When they become part of the committee, they sign a document. Not only do they sign the declaration saying that they don't have a conflict of interest with the vendors, they also sign that they understand that there's, you know, the rules of being part of the committee. And part of that is they can't talk about things outside of a public meeting.
And I'll just add to that, Ms. Giovanelli and board, this is one of the policies that will be coming forth to you, would be the cone of silence. We're going to be updating board policy 6.07 to include some of these things that Ms. Adams and Ms. Millay are speaking of. This is part of our process.
Great, thank you so much. I
have a correction that might make you happy. I totally misspoke. The cost of Bonfire is only $20,000.
Okay.
I think it was $60,000 initially.
That's what I was thinking. There was an upfront.
Yes, I apologize for that. I have a lot of numbers in my head.
Yeah, that's fine. I figured there was an upfront fee and then a month, annual fee. So thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, any other? I'm just going to ask this. So, and that being said, with a $60,000 investment and $20,000 a year, what's the return on the investment, or what's the anticipated return on the investment? I mean, I see we're saving a lot of paper and time.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things is there are savings for both the district and our vendors. In terms of the district, it's a time savings. So as we're processing hundreds of contracts annually, this allows us to be more efficient at doing that. It reduces some of our tasks, such as we have to do records retention annually, where we pull from file room, we review everything we have, and we just decide what has to go. So that task is eliminated. So it's really a cost savings for every procurement agent who is producing every solicitation and every support staff supporting them. And then on the vendor side, there's the cost savings of time and paper and delivery.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this
One
presentation.
more thing I was going to add in the very beginning was I wanted to say it sort of, we were talking today earlier, it's kind of like when we first started using board docs. So Bonfire is kind of that way. You can score. Everything's electronic. You can see where agendas are in the process and the approval process. You don't have to chase emails and things like that. So it really, you know, we're getting there. We're evolving, right? So
yes.
Yeah.
And just to add to the answer in terms of the cost savings, there's some cost savings that are not material costs, right? There's public trust, and there's a process that's in place that helps with conflicts of interest checks. It helps to ensure that we have a clean and a process that it has a lot of integrity in it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
I wonder how long the video is.
It's probably like
You just watch it.
I know, we should have just watched it.
I'm going to leave this out and watch it at some point.
So next on the agenda, we have Dr. Savage and Mr. Dodig, Executive Director of Human Resources, to talk about the job description of Chief Strategy Officer. Welcome, Mr. Dodig.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And just this was at the request of the board to have a public discussion here at a briefing so that there could also be public comment, which we absolutely appreciate that. This particular job description that is included today is just a job description. At this point, I want to reiterate that. It is a job description that very closely aligns to the Chief Strategy Officer job description in the Clark County School District. But this is not a new idea to the School District of Lee County. In fact, we actually pursued this effort back when I first came back to the district from the Tallahassee. Dr. Atkins at that time, and really the entire chief team, really saw a tremendous need to be more of a results-oriented organization. The term that Trey Davis used to mention was a composite performance-based organization. Composite meaning across divisions, working collaboratively in a performance results-oriented context. Now, the biggest piece that this connects to is it's wonderful to have a strategic plan, but unless you have a true accountability mechanism in place that is independent, but also is able to bring a level of additional analysis to each area in the organization, kind of driving value through the organization in that composite manner where it cuts across all areas, you can have a plan, but it doesn't actually materialize into anything in terms of results. Now, I did have a tremendous privilege of talking to Dr. Bernier's Chief Strategy Officer there in Clark County. And it was a pretty exciting conversation. One of the first terms I remember her talking about was business intelligence. And that is a sophisticated term that you really hear in much more cutting-edge corporate environment, as well as just very performance-oriented organizations, because it's really about having the proper context and understanding of the way your organization is performing using data and metrics and sophisticated analytics in order to really frame around that piece. So in an organization of our size, especially bureaucratic organizations like government entities, it can be often very siloed, but yet, as earlier today in a number of the presentations we had, but I'm thinking of well, we could talk about the one that we just had. I mean, literally the one we just had with procurement. You have to bring lots of different interdisciplinary folks together to serve in a procurement where there's different expertise kind of coming together to put forward a recommended vendor. But earlier in the Cape Coral Technical Colleges, you have the end business unit users, but you also have all the varying parts, business services. Is there a solid business plan? Do they fully understand it? How is their core business from an HR standpoint fundamentally different from our primary business in the K-12 environment? From an academic services standpoint, knowing that most people come up through that K-12 background, how do you make sure that the leaders who are then in place really understand what's much more of a college environment? So all these things are very complicated, and what this type of role and this type of thinking in an organization really allows you to do is to focus more on metrics, goals, targets, and strategic outcomes. Just wanted to kind of give you that basic piece from this standpoint. The other piece that Dr. Bernier spoke about that I really enjoyed, because it's very near and dear to my heart, and he had no way of knowing it, was the concept of scorecarding. Really real-time information that the organization needs to understand how is the system performing, not just annually, which is of course important. We're used to school grades and things like that, but all along the way, how do you have very precise information that is telling you how you're doing? The equivalent analogy that I've always thought about is driving a car. And he had some pretty good analogy, but the one that I've used a lot is you're driving a car. Imagine driving your car, but you didn't have any of the gauges that you're used to seeing. So you know that there's a speed limit, but you have no way to monitor it. You understand you're looking around, you don't really know if you're over that speed limit, under it. You don't have any idea if a full tank of gas until all of a sudden the car starts to shake. If you don't have that ability to know how you're doing within the process, then every time you're getting data, it's always too little too late. When I was a school principal, I used to refer to that as autopsy data. It's after the fact. You can't do anything to save. You're now having to deal with that piece. So one of the things that was very exciting, as Dr. Bernier explained his vision for us as a school, was to be very performance focused. One thing that is evident of that in his negotiations with the board was his contract. He specifically wanted his contract and his evaluation to occur after all the schools have been, after the results have been
occurred, so that it's not, well, I think that we're going to be, it's how have we actually done? And I thought that was very intentional on his part. So those are just a few of those pieces. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I would say. Last is just that concept back to business intelligence. It must be actionable. One of the terms that I heard earlier today was, Ms. Giovanelli, I believe you said, but I think all the board members have talked about this at one time or another, return on investment. We're a $2 billion company. Where every single division is competing for the same limited pool of resources. So while we have lots of strategies being deployed, how do we ensure that that strategy is really driving value? It won't always be an obvious economic benefit, but it always has a pretty obvious economic cost. So when we talk about things such as the Bonfire and so forth, those are things that you actually can calculate in terms of a cost to the organization. Those are things that you can do from an understanding of systems and process analysis. That where I think we have to do a better job is articulating the value in very, I think, objective and transparent terms. So that's my quick understanding of that piece. Dr. Bernier has a lot better that he could share about why this is really effective, but that's just at the request of the board. That's my basic understanding of what the intention is. Again, I want to reiterate, the board approving this does not in any way mean that the board is approving anything within the budget relative to this. We have a number of vacant chief positions. This is a very, in large districts, this is not an uncommon position, as well as in other organizations, not even just school districts. So this is just a job description, which the next superintendent would have all the discretion whether or not he chooses to fulfill this, to place someone in this, as he has access to all of the currently board-approved job descriptions that would have to be then matched to a budget in order to put a person in it. Questions?
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gittens, you're first again.
I'm just quick.
We're going to put her
all.
on jeopardy.
I think I asked yesterday, comparing this Chief Strategy Officer and the strategic position that you had brought before us before. How does this compare or differ or?
So years ago, when we first started this conversation, we never actually put forward a full job description. It was kind of a work in progress. The most recent one that was brought to the board was very much almost identical to what you have. It just wasn't in our complete template, and then it went through formatting in HR to get it. It was the original one that was transmitted. Actually, they've had numerous iterations from other organizations. This one, again, very closely aligns to the Clark County. We, to my knowledge, have never had this job with this specific title. I think the one that was proposed that you might be thinking about, because it was, again, a discussion back in July and August, was a Chief Performance Officer, which is, again, very similar in frame. That job description was extremely vague in terms of those pieces. Didn't have nearly the specificity that the Clark County one had. It was, and that we could pull that and certainly send it back, but it was a Chief Performance Officer. Again, very common, very similar scope.
Okay, and this question is probably going to go to Mr. Dodick, because he looks lonely, like he wants a question.
Ms. Gittens, could you pull your...
Talk at them.
Thank you.
You can't hear me?
No.
Really? Okay.
Something like going to Dodick.
Okay.
I can hear.
Yes, he heard me, so that's all that matters.
The rest
As
of the
we're
board,
looking,
Ms. Gittens.
I'm sorry?
Everybody needs to hear
We
that.
all need to hear.
I'm talking Mr. Dodick. I'm teasing. Okay. In the HR realm, as we're looking at this job description, and it says minimum qualifications.
Yes.
And at the end of most of them, there is preferred. So how, it's kind of a pick and choose then, that to me, it's an oxymoron to have minimum and preferred. I'm not sure how those two, minimum to me says you have to have this.
Correct.
But if it says preferred, you don't have to have it. So
Correct.
help me in my little pea brain understand how minimum and preferred can live together.
So those first 6 items in the minimum qualifications, usually the first 2 or 3 are specific to the title. The rest all of the chief job descriptions would have similar language. So the master's degree obviously is required. A doctorate degree is preferred, but a person with a master's certainly would qualify.
Right.
Okay, so that's the difference between preferred and the minimum qualification. 10 years of administrative experience, and that sentence goes on, I don't need it to read it to you, is required, not preferred.
Right, but when you get down to industry certification preferred, so you can have it and you don't have to have it, and then the last one, the Lean Six Sigma certification is preferred. I don't know, I guess I always look at this as you have the minimum qualifications and the preferred qualifications.
Correct.
But they would be separate, so.
Well, that's, okay, I mean, I understand your point.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
Because otherwise,
that's something we could talk about relative to our form, sure.
Right, because I can pick and choose from these items if it says preferred, right?
Well, the idea is to get as many qualified people as possible, minimally qualified, into the pool to
Right.
be hired. So if you create everything as a absolute requirement, you're going to limit your pool.
Okay. All right. I'll leave it because we could argue this. That a separate section that says preferred would be a little clearer to me.
Understood.
Okay. All right. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Board members, any other questions or comments?
Okay. Thank you. This is on the agenda tonight, just to remind you.
Yeah,
Yep.
I just want to say that, thank you for bringing this back, because I know that this was something that Dr. Bernier had wanted us to bring here as well, so thank you for bringing this up. Thank you, Mr. Doty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So, next on the agenda is public comment. Attorney Zupke, please read the qualifications for public comment.
Not on.
In the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on this meeting's agenda. If you completed a public comment card, please put it in the basket provided at the back of the room. Please be advised that the board will not respond during public comment to remarks made by speakers. Speakers who fail to follow proper decorum in the chambers will be ruled out of order. Any speaker continuing with such remarks will be required to relinquish the microphone per Board Policy 1.11 and may be removed from the chambers. There will be one warning. Per Board Policy 1.11, the time per speaker, one moment, will be 3 minutes. You will find a countdown on the big screens in the front of the room. Once your time has elapsed, the microphone will automatically shut off. Please state your name when you approach the microphone. I will call your name. Today there are 3 speakers. Please follow staff direction when lining up. Madam Chair, there are 3 speakers that wish to address the board at this briefing.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak and hasn't filled out a card? Seeing none, please proceed. Attorney Zupke.
Yes, well, the 3 speakers, please proceed to the back of the room. Denise Nystrom, Sharon McGill, and Christy DiVigili.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Denise Nystrom. Most of the time when somebody wants to hire, it's in my paradigm to understand the hire. I'm just curious about the position that's being hired. I'm not necessarily saying that it isn't a good idea. I just feel like I don't quite understand enough about it. Because with the strategic plan, all of the chief academic officers and the various administrators are all involved in it. So what specifically makes this position unique? Just a comment, because normally I completely understand that there's need for personnel. Last year, many of the community members did ask for transparency with the code of conduct and did ask that the Parents' Bill of Rights be up front and center. I'm again making that request so that parents understand legally what their rights are and that they don't click onto something to try to find something that they don't know anything about. And shy of that, I just want to give a great big thanks to Dr. Spiro and his entire team. A group of us have been meeting with them. We've had 4 meetings to date. They have been professional, collegial. We've gone over the upcoming laws. We're working really, really well together just in terms of sharing ideas and finding workarounds for various things that we've been talking about. And I would not be doing my due diligence if I didn't let you know that they're doing an excellent job, and we have really, really appreciated working with them. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Sharon McGill. Good afternoon, everyone. I know when I sat through the long-term planning meeting, and my comment at the end was, it would be great if the public could understand where their sales tax dollars are going, because this is what they're needed for. And so this presentation today really helped. I think it's only a step, though, because my first question when I read it was, how are they making recommendations to the board about how the money is being sent? And well, that came up today. Actually, they're not making recommendations to the board about how it's being spent. And so changing that policy really does make sense from a community stakeholder standpoint. That was one of my first questions. And perception is reality. And being transparent makes all the difference in the world. And it said in the presentation that there's an FGCU economic impact study going on. Now, is that a study that tells me as a community stakeholder, if that sales tax money had not been available, these projects would not have been able to be done? And in the planning, the long-term planning, if we didn't have that sales tax, which of these plans would not be able to move forward? So I think there's still a lot more transparency that could be taking place as far as what's going on with that sales tax. And I will tell you, from somebody who has tried to work through the district website, it's not the easiest thing to find information. I mean, people sit here and say, oh, well, it's on the website, just tell them to go to the website and find it. It's not that easy to find information on the website. And so just to make that comment for the general public, I think there could be a lot of ways where it could be enhanced, where it would be easier for the public to find information. Thank you.
Christy DiVigili. So I thought that I have to agree with Sharon, the independent sales Surtax committee meeting, the update was extremely informative. I actually had an opportunity to watch that meeting the other day, and the gentleman that runs it is he's extremely intelligent, and they really know what they're doing. That's a really well-functioning committee. So kudos there. So my only real public comment today would be about the comprehensive health education legislation presentation and the curriculum team. They did a stellar job today. I understand that it is the legislative obligation of the district to provide an opt-out, and I understand that there are a lot of people that would also like that to be opt-in, but this was a very good step in the right direction. And that letter, that comprehensive letter that they created, is a lot better and a huge step in the right direction compared to the original opt-out letter that's on the district website, which is like nothing. It's just like a one-pager. I do have a comment about that though. So if we're going to make if we're going to make anything available digitally, my one ask would be that there is an avenue or a procedure available for parents to opt out of certain sections of things, and if not, so that they don't just have to leave it blank or not. Because I had to do that the entire first half of the school year, was leave all of my things blank because I wasn't able to opt out of a portion of it, even though it said on there that I could opt out. And when I contacted the district, there was not a way for them to be able to do that. So maybe shoring that up in that regard. What was the other thing? Okay, the only other thing was about the that job description, and I get it that technically approving the job description isn't approving the position itself, but it is the road that gets us there. So rather than pretending that it's not, that approving this isn't going to lead us there, maybe we could just be, again, transparent and just upfront with that. All I would say is that if Dr. Bernier really wants this position, then what is the harm in waiting for him to get here to ask for this job description to be approved? If this is what he wants, then I don't understand why we're rushing it, why we can't just wait for him to ask for it himself. That's all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, ladies, for your input. We appreciate you. Next on the agenda is good of the order. Board members, anybody have anything for good of the order? Okay, we'll move on to board members' comments and reports. And we'll start with Ms. Gittens, because she likes to be first.
I did not say that. Okay. I wanted to, not sure when the time is, to address the topic that I brought up yesterday. I know we did a consensus about not moving the speakers back to the front of the room. And I just wanted to know, first of all, to make a statement about it. I went back and I watched the meeting again, and several members talked about the fact that our Safety and Security Department said that this is what we need to do. And I feel like we are the board and we should, make that decision about how we feel about safety and security, or at least be a part of the discussion. When I sat in the seat as the chair, I was more often than not told the chair does not make decisions for the board, that we are a governance team of 7 board members, and that we all should be participating in whatever is going to affect the rest of us. So I was a little taken aback that there were meetings and discussions and decisions, and that the chair was involved, but we were not involved in that decision. So I just wanted to say that I think we should have had an opportunity as a board to discuss how we feel about it, and to hear from safety and security what their issues were, what their concerns were, and they hear ours as well. So I I really take umbrance to the way that that was handled. I know we did a consensus yesterday, and if that means that it's dead in the water, I just want to make it known that I feel we should, as many other districts, and some that never stopped where the public stood or whatever, I just think it's good faith to the public to at least look into making those changes. I personally feel it was a little disingenuous to be called that I was trying to grandstand and be a hero. That was not my point, and that is not why I sit on this board. But I just think we need to consider all of our constituents, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, that we should consider the concerns or the needs or desires of all. So I'll leave it at that.
May I respond to that?
Yes, Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. I was actually in the building when they were discussing that, and that was something that we were going to bring back to the board. And as far as our safety committee, our safety personnel, that's why we have them. They are the safety for the district. And the conversation will be coming back to the board. And in the meantime, we were looking at suggestions of making sure that people are being seen by making sure that we can put them up here on the screen so that no one has to turn their neck around or do this with their telephone, so that that visual is going to be there for everyone. So that is what I was trying to say. Can we come up with something to ease that until they feel comfortable, and we all have that discussion about returning to what was, a year ago, a year and a half ago? So that's where that conversation came from. And then I apologize because I'm the person who said that, because none of us, I don't believe, that any of us are afraid of anybody who comes in here, and we welcome the people who come in here. We see them out on the streets, we see them everywhere. It's not that we're afraid of them. It's safety precautions, and that we have to adhere to, I believe, to our safety and security at this time, until such time that they feel, and it's not just them, it's the whole team. It's our officers who sit up here as well, and putting them into a situation or a predicament. So that will come back before all of us to have that conversation. Thank you.
And I understood the same yesterday. You did explain that, and I understood that. I just find it offensive. I'm a grown woman, and if I feel I want to walk out and speak to someone in the audience, I don't see how a security or safety or committee or whatever, what are they going to do, arrest me if I go in the audience? If I want to go out and speak to somebody or hug a baby or whatever, I should be able to do it. That's all I'm saying. And I am not going to be held to a standard that I had no input in, that I can't, as an adult and as an elected official on this board, to be able to deal with the public if I choose to do so. And it has nothing to do with grandstanding. It has to do with what I feel that I owe the public that put me here.
And
so
may
that's...
Just one final. We all had that conversation. We all, as a board, decided that. So I just want to put that it was a decision that we made as a board to follow that.
Okay, and I don't want to go back and forth. It was over a year ago, and I have asked that we bring this back up after a year when all that happened is over. Where is our good faith in the community? I really want to move on.
Ms. Dupree-Bruno has...
I just want to make sure that it's very, very clear that with regards to the meetings, we do have safety and security meetings. These are exempt meetings pursuant to the statute, and we can have confidential discussions with regards to safety. So I just want to make sure that's clear, so I don't get a letter saying that we had a meeting outside of sunshine.
No, and I'm not saying that. Ms. Jordan, did you attend the safety and security meeting?
Yes, I was here.
No, did you attend the meeting? That's all I'm asking.
I was here when they were speaking on it, yes.
Okay, so if you attended the meeting as the chair, to me, it would behoove you to come back and let us all know that this was a discussion that was held.
Ms. Gittens,
So,
it just
anyway.
happened.
Okay. Anyway, I really want to move on. All right? I have a couple of things that, first of all, my husband and I got an opportunity to go to see Frozen at North Fort Myers Academy of the Arts, and I don't think I mentioned it before. I felt like I was on Broadway somewhere. It was really excellent. It was just excellent, and my hat goes off to all of the teachers and the coaches and everyone that trained those students over there. The part that kind of just grabbed at my heart was when they introduced the front row. There were a group of students that had graduated last year, and because of COVID, they did not get to present the performance. And they were there as special guests that evening, and that was just heart-wrenching, and it shows the overwhelming effects that we have gone through with COVID in the last 24 months. So I just wanted to mention that. Learning for Life, the talent show. Wow, that was great. Ms. Giovanelli, Ms. Vaughn, and I were judges, and Ms. Jordan too. And the talent, it's extremely good. We have a lot of bright future students. And I also visited the Career Source Fair at FSW, and it was interesting. As I was walking in, a young man was walking out, and he was all but skipping out the door. And I said, "So how was the fair?" He says, "I got a job." I said, "Excellent," and I asked him where he was going to be working and all that. So it was really a good opportunity for the community to get together, all of the businesses, and combine their efforts for jobs for everyone. I would like to suggest that sometimes they move some of those things further east, because transportation is an issue in the middle of the day for some people, to have it further out in the east. And I do want to comment on, after the presentation, about the technical schools, and Ms. Patrica was mentioning not to move the programs. I started out my questions asking, what is the percentage now? It was 38% of the students that attended Fort Myers Tech came from the East Zone. That was 2 years ago. So I know that it's more. And when we talk about priorities, to me, that's a priority. If you have a business, you look, where are your customers? Where should I put my next store? And that is what is necessary, not what we've promised and said, oh, well, this is the central location of the county. Where are the working people that would benefit most from that program? And I hope that that's the way we look at it, not that we have promised that we would keep something in one particular area. And I will say, I'll say the last one until tonight, and that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Ms. Vaughn?
She's on.
Ms. Vaughn?
Is she on yours?
Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. Okay, there's a few things. I had gone to we had the District Career Advisory Board meeting, which is the CTE partnerships. That just took place last week, and in that meeting, it was great listening to everything that is happening with our CTE programs, the people that are on there, the engagement of the community, and the needs of looking for more people to be engaged with our students and our kids. The next day, they had the Career Source career fair that was at FSW. We had 4 of our schools participated in that. Ms. Fisher, I saw you there, so you were there. But we had 4 of our buses, 4 schools participated where they were brought in by buses. There was someone there to help them with their resumes, so they could bring their resume there and help them make sure that it was good for them to speak to people. There was people there for them to speak to. They had lunch there as well. And the next one will be held at FGCU, and that'll be May, and that'll be for the other schools that will be bussed in. The Career Source, they fund that for our kids so that they're able to participate, as well as anyone else in the community that would like to participate in that. I thought that was great. Also, Take Stock in Children, they had that through the foundation, giving, I believe it was 39 scholarships for 4 years for some of our students starting at 6th grade and 9th graders. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they said the grants or the scholarships were worth $500,000 in scholarships is what I believe that they had stated. And so I really thank the foundation for that. I also had the opportunity to go with Ms. Constance Wade Davis, who is part of the CARS group she created, and we visited with Colonial Elementary. Ms. Gittens was there as well, and we were able to hand out gift cards to bus drivers and the aides for Colonial Elementary. They were very excited about that. It's been busy week. We had building our legacy. The high school kids were here at our, right down the hallway here, 150 of them. Again, I think I spoke about this last week, or 2 weeks ago, but they were great. They are coming in, and they definitely want to be teachers. So that's exciting, and I'm really looking forward to the future because I know that these kids have a lot to offer. UCF school visited with the Franklin Park and United Way to make sure that Franklin Park was doing what they needed to do with our community partnership schools, and then visited with the Fort Myers Middle School Academy to make sure that everybody is working together to achieve their certification, which they have a 5-year span on that. And I'm just really looking forward to what they bring to the table for our kids. And that is my report.
Thank you very much. Ms. Patrica.
Thank you. May I ask through the chair, Madam Attorney DeFree-Bruno, is there any update with regard to potential negotiations on Dr. Bernier's and Dr. Savage's contracts?
I have spoken to both individuals, and there may be a possibility. However, we still have to talk a little bit more. I will let the board know that whatever is decided will include some type of financial consideration. So I want the board to be aware of that on both parties' parts.
And you'll give us, I don't really know what that means, so you'll give us...
I will explain that as we continue on with negotiations.
Okay. Thank you. And also, may I ask through the chair, could I have an electronic version of that legal presentation that you gave yesterday? I can't manipulate it.
Oh, you mean a PowerPoint?
Correct.
Just a plain old PowerPoint?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about last DAC meeting, which included sort of the meat was placed on the bones for the summer programs that we all approved through the approval of ESSER funds. I cannot recommend enough to my colleagues that you watch that meeting. It was truly outstanding. I don't believe that a stone was left unturned or that a detail was not attended to. It's really amazing to sit at this table and approve ESSER funds, sort of the skeleton of it, but to see what staff did in terms of putting the meat on the bones was really, really impressive. So I recommend that you watch that.
What's the date on it? Sorry.
That's okay. I'll look at my calendar and let you know. DAC was Wednesday, March 30th.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, I went to a fundraiser at Valerie's house. They raised $1 million for children and families who are grieving here in Lee County. Hopefully I don't have to remind anyone that if you have a child who's grieving the loss of a loved one, Valerie's house should be your #1 go-to place. I also want to talk to my colleagues about the FSBI Friday Live from last week. The executive director, I think, or maybe the president, I don't remember her title, of the Florida Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents gave a presentation about their association, and Dr. Savage and I have discussed the association and some upcoming training that they have, and how beneficial it might be to us as a school district to cast a wider net and hire more minority administrators, how to go about doing that, how to train, and all of those things. So if you have time, I recommend that you watch that one as well. In terms of safety and security in the boardroom, I do recall a dry run, so to speak, here in the boardroom. It was a closed meeting because of safety and security, and I'm not going to get into the details because that would render the meeting and the purpose of the meeting moot, but the board did agree to what we're currently doing at that meeting. I want to thank Dr. Spiro's team, I don't know if he's here, for reviewing the challenged textbooks. We all got an email. There was a lot of hard work that went into that. It was thorough, it was professional, it was informative. I do regret that these challenges are such a massive drain on staff time and resources, because I'm certain that staff could be doing other work that would have a direct positive impact on our students. That being said, I do appreciate their time and professionalism. Just want to mention to the board that I feel like to a certain extent we might be falling off of our agreed protocols with regard to time spent talking at the table. Those that chair our meetings absolutely do their best, but each of us really has a responsibility to adhere to the rules that the team agreed to in terms of established protocols for how we conduct ourselves. In answer to one of the questions that was asked by the public, which I rarely do, but I'm really excited about the FGCU economic impact study. If you think of the sales tax as the fuel of this economy, or a fuel used for this economy here in Lee County, it's really measuring that fuel, I think is how I would say it. It sort of quantifies the benefits of the sales tax on the economy in Lee County. That's how I view the FGCU economic impact study, and I'm really, really, really excited that they're doing it. It was brought up the very first year, and I'm glad to see that it's finally getting underway. And last, I would like to take sort of a moment of personal privilege, as I did in EDAC last night. Have you all seen my button? Has anybody asked me about my button?
We couldn't speak on here, but who was that?
The button is a picture of my great niece. Her name is Emily. My niece Tina is her mom. My niece, I was 8 years old when Tina was born, so I was a niece for the I was an aunt for the very first time at age 8. So Tina is more like a contemporary to me than she is a niece. When she was little, I was an aunt, but now we're contemporaries. Anyways, her daughter is autistic, and it is Autism Awareness Month, and sometimes when something impacts you personally, you speak about it a little bit more loudly at the table, and the impact that it has on not just yourself but others in the community. So I want to read a little something that Tina sent me in the mail, along with a button for each one of my children to wear and my husband to wear. All 7 of my brothers and sisters got one, all of their kids got one, so there's like, I don't know, there's probably 100 of us all walking around with these buttons on for the month of April. The title of what I'm going to read is called Nothing to Cure, and it's a conversation between Tina and God. Tina said, "Hey God." God replied, "Hey Tina." Tina said, "Cure autism." God said, "No." Tina said, "Why?" God said, "There is nothing to cure." Tina said, "Huh?" God said, "Autistic people aren't broken. They aren't sick. They are just people singing a beautiful song with lyrics that are foreign to you." Tina said, "But sometimes I don't understand what song my daughter is singing." God said, "That's okay. Forget the lyrics and just sit back and enjoy the melody." Tina said, "I don't like to see her struggle." God said, all flowers struggle just before they blossom. Tina said, if you won't cure autism, what will you do? God said, I'll have you help me cure something else. Tina said, what? God said, ignorance. And I think that's beautiful. The other thing I'd like to talk about in terms of Tina's experience in the world and in parenting is whether she's at church or at the grocery store or whatever, and her child might not be acting the way we expect a typical child to act, the sideways glances and the dirty looks and the judgment is very hurtful. So, you know, if you see a parent who's struggling, think about offering support or a smile, or as I would do, a punch on the arm, or, you know, however it is you offer support, and understand that when you're walking down the street and you wave to someone and they don't wave back, it might not be because they're mean and nasty and terrible person. It might be because they have a challenge that doesn't show up physically and they're incapable of interacting the way you would expect someone to interact. So that's my plea for autism awareness. I also have to mention Family Initiative, our local group here in Lee County that does such a phenomenal job, not just with children who are autistic, but with their families as well, and helping support the families who are supporting their autistic children. Those are my comments for today. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Pre-Bruno, do you have Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, Ms. Vaughn, did you want to make a comment, or do you want to just hold it for this evening?
I will hold it until this evening. I'm feeling better, and we'll come on in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Ms. Giovanelli.
Thank you. I only have but a couple things. And one of them was actually it's Autism Awareness Month, and so that was actually very, very nice and puts things in perspective that you said, Ms. Patrica. And then I just wanted to comment on Frozen. My grandkids attended that with me, and we had a great time. I brought them home a little too late and got in trouble, but that's beside the point. They enjoyed it, and so did I, immensely, actually. It was excellent. It was also, we attended the Take Stock in Children New Scholar mentoring program luncheon, and that was really great, too, because everybody needs a mentor. And it's proven fact that the success rate of children today, if they have a mentor, is very high, and I support that program 100%. We also have attended, several of us attended the Shine event, and that was a Hope Hospice fundraiser, and that was very well attended as well, and a very nice evening. The weather was actually a little hot, but it was still a nice evening. The other thing that I wanted to comment was on the Chief Strategy Officer. There were some public speakers about that. This is something that Dr. Bernier actually spoke to me about personally, so I'm sure that, and I know he told me he was going to talk to all the board members. It is important to him to have this position, and that is why it's on the agenda, even when he's not here, because I would agree that any positions really should be waiting until he gets here, but this is one that he's requested and specifically said something to me about that, so I thought that that would be important for the public to know that he is requesting that position. I think he pretty much worked with Dr. Savage on this and the job description. I think that is it. One of the other things I do have is I was still looking at the agenda for this evening, and it doesn't look like the administrative personnel. It's still all on there. Nothing's changed. And I thought I had updated it.
Can I make a comment on that?
So
it does say on that piece that the one at the bottom is the original is attached below.
Oh,
but above it is the one, because I had the same question.
Okay.
Just look at the little fine print above administrative content.
Okay. Because I know I was logged in properly, so, okay, that makes sense. That was it, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I won't be redundant and repeat what my colleagues have repeated, have shared. But I will say, as a follow-up to the presentation on comprehensive health education today, There is tomorrow from 5 to 7 at Florida Gulf Coast, there is the School District of Lee County Spring School Garden Celebration. And it's going to include activities like a live steel drum band, a food forest tour, a garden photo show and tell, garden reflection and planning for the summer, a potluck, which will be a taste from 10 of the gardens, and a seed plant swap. And that's another thing that I'll compliment Ms. Roy on, because she has really created a lot of partnerships with the community and really helped with not only the health education curriculum, but the activities that take place in this district. And the family nutrition program is growing because of her efforts. I look forward to the Save Our Students enrichment program coming this summer, and I know that students are provided opportunities with arts, career development, and they also have an opportunity to receive a stipend, and many of them really need that. Let's see, I had an interview with the representatives from RSM, our board auditor, and I just want to say that I am actually looking forward to their risk assessment and to working with them finally. I'm glad that we have them on board. The Sheriff's Youth Activities League has a teen driver challenge and advanced driving techniques and life-saving skills for students who know how to drive and have a license. And they have a class on Friday evening, which is online, and then actual driving at 2 locations, one at the Edison Mall and one at somewhere south, and I forgot exactly where it is, on Saturday mornings, and they are booked solid. It's an excellent program. And in addition to Autism Awareness Month, and my great-grandson is also autistic, and Jacob, and he's a hoot. And you're right, Ms. Patrica, there is nothing to cure. And this month is also Child Abuse Prevention Month. So with that, I'll save the rest of my comments for this evening, and I will see about Attorney Dupuy-Bruno. Oh. You know, I knew that was going to happen because I started Ms. Gittens first. Okay. Ms. Morgan, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay, and I don't have much. First of all, Construction Advisory met, and because we didn't have the presentation that we anticipated, I threw the meeting to Mr. Rickenbacker, who did a terrific job talking to the members of the Construction Advisory Committee about the difference between sales tax and capital funding and how it's allocated among projects and whatever, and got some good comments. We talked a little bit about the technical colleges and the need to move more aggressively on some of those programs. So it was a good meeting, and thank you very much, Mr. Ruckenbacher, for taking the ball and running with it. With respect to boardroom technology, I have said for a long time, we need to ask people for money to do these things, rather than spending $50,000 on the machinery and stuff that we need. We need to be out in the community saying, we need to upgrade our communication system in the boardroom, and if you will put together a group that will raise the money to do it, then we'll put your name on the door. I mean, this notion that we have to carry everything ourselves, and we don't open the door for the community to do some of the smaller things, and I consider this a smaller thing, some of the smaller things that we need done, I think is just unfortunate. I realize we don't have the staff anymore, or we haven't had the staff for a while, to do this, but I just want to emphasize that I don't think we think enough about partners in the community to support some of our needs. And then I do want to comment about the safety and security. I think there's a risk to us as a board and as a school district if we have subject matter experts in safety and security providing an opinion to us and that we choose to override it. I think we need to be very, very, very careful when we choose to override professional staff. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ms. Patrica.
Scheduling question, and I think I see Ms. McClung back there. When do we change our committee assignments? That's coming up soon, isn't it?
Yes.
You can email. You don't have to.
It's June. Yeah, it's in May. It's
Okay.
coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was June. Okay. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Gittens.
In that same realm, I was wondering too, and I'll send the email to everyone, to find out what positions are open. We don't get updated very often on that. In other words, if someone has dropped off of one of the advisories or the committees or whatever, I had suggested at one point we have a Google Doc or something so we can check it ourselves to see if there's a position that's open that we need to put someone on. I know that Ms. Reeder does it, and I'm aware of that, but I just think to be a little more efficient, if there were, we don't have to have all the information about the people on the Google Doc, but just to have it, I'd like to be able to just go and check, oh, I need to appoint someone for this committee, or someone has dropped off of this, and just to give us the number that we need, just to keep us up to date, because many times I don't find out until months later. So my area does not have representation on that committee just because I wasn't aware that we had a spot open.
Okay, so it was my understanding that the committee liaisons report to Ms. Reeder, and she lets us know when we...
Immediately.
When we have to
Immediately.
appoint for our district. Okay.
She does not
and-
play.
And did you have something, Ms. Reeder?
No, that was just, I was going to say, I was just going to add,
She does not play with that.
it's
Okay.
immediate. It's not, there's no open spot sitting out in a Google anything. It's, and then it's, if there's a delay, it's going to be up to the board member because they didn't pick somebody.
Yeah, and if you don't answer in like 35 minutes.
to get on the agenda.
She's on the phone.
Yeah.
I,
She
anyway.
does not play. That's a good way to put it.
play.
Thank you.
Way.
And now that Mrs. Morgan...
Wherever we are.
And I was not attacking Mary at all. I was making a statement.
Yeah, well, I just-
So please do not say that I was going against
Oh,
Ms.
no,
Reeder.
no.
Thank you.
Person said that.
Thank you for the question. And now that Mrs. Morgan has had her turn, Attorney Bruno,
I have no comments, thank you.
okay, and Superintendent Savage?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Just to answer on the committee piece, I'll certainly follow up with Ms. Reeder, and just if there's any notification on the procedure, if there's any lag, we'll address that just to get an answer to that. Also want to just address something that was kind of was stated. There were a few comments related to Dr. Bernier. We are now embarking in a unique moment. Starting, I believe, this Friday, Dr. Bernier will officially be in active duty in a formalized relationship with the district. You know, he's up to this point really been providing really pro bono his consultation. He's been doing it while juggling his other job, and now he's physically here in Lee County, which is excellent. He's been sharing a lot of wisdom and experience while getting to know a lot of our people, board members, doing a lot of that while balancing his work. But one thing that is very important, I think, and I'm going to speak for myself, I'm not going to speak for him, but I would owe this to him because one of the first conversations we had was about the professional boundaries. So I think it's very important that people are not perceiving that in any way, while he is not formally while we know he is the next superintendent, that it's very important people don't believe that there is a proxy leadership, that he is out there making decisions and that we are then beholden to formalizing those things. That would be inappropriate, and he'd be the first person, I think, to say that would be improper. So a lot of what he does is really share recommendations based on his judgment, experience. He's getting to know us. He's formalizing plans. Those are all things that are occurring right now. So I don't want people to be misconstruing that when we bring forward a recommendation that he has somehow put his finger on it. That would be improper in terms of recommendations and so forth. So as we mentioned about the job description, again, yes, that was certainly derived through lots of conversation with him, but when I make a recommendation coming forward in this role, I have to do so saying that I would make that recommendation so that I'm accountable for that. It's a unique situation, but I really want to clarify that as just one example. He will have the ability to speak for himself on every issue once he is in a position to kind of do that. So I just really want to be, it's important for the board, it's also important for the public to understand it. It's also for staff. As people are getting to know them, this is a little bit of a lame duck period. But the business of the district carries on every day. And he's very respectful, has been from day one in that. So I just want to kind of nod to that. The second thing I just want to clarify is we've had a number of conversations relating to security. So I really want to clarify that absolutely the board can direct this. Staff will make their recommendations based on their professional judgment. Another shade session can certainly be arranged, or rather for exempt, so that we could go through the specific protocols that are statutorily we do not discuss in a public meeting for that exact reason. However, ultimately the board can choose to balance the recommendations that are made and also the substantive reasons as to why. That's something the board is entitled to understand from the professionals, why they were making the recommendations they do, and the board in your positions are empowered as a collective board. Now, individual members, of course, that's not the role, but as a board collectively, you do have the ability to balance those, and that is the nature of the role that you hold. So anywho, the other piece I just wanted to say is just really want to nod to Dr. Spire. He's not in here right now, but his team. One of the things that's been very difficult through this last year is to see the kind of the political division. There's a real divisiveness that is often happening where there's a perception of us versus them. You're on one side, one board member, this group. I really appreciate the fact that Dr. Spire and his team really courageously, instead of being defensive, they were willing to engage with people who might have been perceived as if they thought, you're going to find a way to make me the enemy, you're going to find a way to make me wrong. I think it takes a lot more courage and a lot more creativity to come together and try to find a way to collaborate in a way that is genuine and can lead to a better product than what either side or the perception of the side can do. So while he's not here to hear it, I just really respect that. I know there's often been a concern that engagement is like, we just can't, it's easier just to, and simple, but I think I just really respect what he and his team did, and I just wanted to kind of give some kudos on that, as I know that came through today. And last but not least, for me in this specific role, FADS is after our board meeting tonight, I will be getting in the car and driving to Orlando for the FADS piece. And I will just say, first and foremost, my personal side is I hate being away from my family. I absolutely do not like to be away from them anytime I can avoid that. I really try to. But after this most recent legislative session, this is really considered the most significant FADS conference that we have every year because of its position after session. There's a lot that happens, and you really get the access of really the district superintendents across our state, the collective wisdom and experience of some of these folks. Many of the elected ones or even the appointed ones have held office for quite some time. It's just a lot to absorb their collective thinking on this. They also, through the FADS organization, you really get some really sharp people who are just very deeply in this. And so I'm very excited to learn what there is to learn. I'm kind of a note taker, basically. I'll be bringing back a lot of this information to our chiefs. And I will say also to Dr. Bernier, though I've been impressed in a lot of the conversations I have with Dr. Bernier, he follows all of this so closely, closer than pretty much anyone I've ever worked with at that level. He just is very engaged and understands the importance of being engaged in the legislative side of things. So he probably it won't be new to him, a lot of it, but I'm going to do my best to take a lot of notes, learn what I can from all of them, and bring it back to our district. But I will be sad to be away from my family. So that's where I'll be going late tonight. So as late as we go, I will be on the road. So thank you very much.
We'll be out of here early
okay.
tonight.
Good to hear it. All right, and those are my comments.
Jordan.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Ms. Thomas and Ms. Zupke, for this afternoon. And seeing no other business and hearing no objection, this meeting is adjourned, and we'll resume at 5:30 for student performance and at 6 p.m. for an action meeting. Thank you.